Wow, to bolo pekné. Ahojte, všetkých by sme vás chceli privítať v Starej tržnici. So mnou je Samuel Vedátor Kováčik.
A so mnou je Peťo Expl0ited, známy ako Expl0ited. Ahoj, ahoj.
Ahoj, ahojte. Skôr ako začneme tie veľkolepé prednášky, máme tu niečo, čo sa volá Science is Amazing. Vlastne maze, bludisko.
Vy už ste veľkáči, takže hračky vás nebavia, ale slovné by ešte mohli, takže tuto je skvelá slovná hračka a poďme sa pozrieť dovnútra, či nájdeme tých ostatných moderátorov, alebo to budeme robiť dvaja.
Uvidíme, poďme na to.
No, čo nás tu čaká? Pamätáš si? Ja si pamätám takú miestnosť, ktorá nám má ukázať, ako sme informačne obalení z každej strany a ako to na nás môže byť občas až trošku veľa. Poď sa pozrieť.
Tak, toto si môžete vyskúšať ešte po všetkých prednáškach. Budete mať hodinu čas na to preliesiť aj toto bludisko.
Pohľadať ostatných moderátorov.
Správne, keď sa niekto z nás stratí, tak pravdepodobne to budete musieť zobrať za nás. Každopádne, toto bludisko symbolizuje taký ten labyrint hľadania tej správnej cesty v tom svete, v tom mori, v tom bludisku dezinformácií. Napríklad tu máme hoax, že vakcíny obsahujú mikročipy alebo technológie na sledovanie ľudí, alebo menia DNA, alebo spôsobujú autizmus. No a keď sa pozriete do tejto krabičky, sem, kde ukazuje šípka, tak tam je fakt, ktorý to celé rozloží.
Čiže to nie je napchanie prstov, ako bolo v Dune, ale tam sa treba len tak pozrieť a jej. No. Uvidíte, čo tam je, my vám neprezradíme, dojdete sa pozrieť.
Musíte si to zistiť na vlastné oči. Ďalšia zastávka, hoax, ktorý budeme vyvracať, je globálne oteplovanie, ktorý ľudia niektorí hovoria, že je to výmysel, tak tu máme termálnu kameru.
No ja vyzerám pomerne globálne oteplený, nie, ja vyzerám veľmi lokálne oteplený iba na hlave a myslím, že ty to máš celkom podobne. Dojdete si odmerať a zistíte, že napríklad dosť vás má studené ruky, no tie moje vyzerajú ako keby ani nepatrili môjmu telu. Takže dojdete si vyskúšať oteplovanie a kde sa pozrieme ďalej?
To je výborné.
Poď, tu je taká miestnosť.
Toto.
Môžeme ísť overiť, že či je Zem plochá. Myslenie niektorých ľudí možno je trošku ploché, ale
Zem vyzerá, že nie je.
Vyzerá,
Sa viete preniesť do rakety, pozrieť sa na Zem.
Jediné, čo mi tu chýba, je ten bezťažový stav, ale zase je to pomerne bezpečné, takže keď si chce niekto taký polovičný vesmír užiť, tak môže sa prísť pozrieť, ako to vyzerá, ako sa pozerám, tak to vyzerá byť medzinárodná vesmírna stanica, pohľad z nej takto úplne práve teraz. No a poďme sa pozrieť na ďalší hoax, ktorý sa týka toho, že či nám 5G technológie môžu spôsobovať rakovinu, vyvolať na vírusy a podobne. Tu môžeš otestovať, že či na tebe žiarenie niečo spraví. Toto nie je solárko, nemusíš sa báť, že odtiaľ to vidíš teraz taký opečený.
Akože musím povedať, že keď zavriem oči, ani necítim, že na mne je nejaké žiarenie, takže...
A treba povedať, že všetky tieto miesta sú pekné na fotenie, takže kľudne sa sem dojdete pofotiť.
Áno, vybavíme jednu vec.
Super nasvietené, máme vybavené možno ďalej. Takže potom si tu pekne porobte fotky, všetko je to veľmi pekné, ale nie je to len o tých veciach, ktoré sú pekné, ale o tých veciach, ktoré sa nám možno až tak nepáčia, ktoré v našom svete nefungujú ideálne. Takže o tom to bude dnešný event. Porozprávať sa o tom, ako sa v našom svete nestratiť.
Presne tak, pretože veda je kompas v labyrinte informácií. Vy ste tu na správnom mieste, my sme vyšli tiež z tohto labyrintu a za malú chvíľku sa s vami vidíme na stage. Ja len pripomeniem, že vás čakajú fantastické prednášky a aj to, že tu máte svojich učiteľov a podľa mňa nikoho by nepotešilo viac ako práve ich, keby tlieskate prednáške z teoretickej fyziky, to skrátka vyzerá dobre v ich očiach a takisto aj v našich. Takže teším sa, že ste tu s nami a začíname. Veľký potlesk. Tak ešte raz, vítajte v Starej tržnici, ďakujeme, že ste prišli. Nachádzate sa na evente ESET4SCHOOLS od nadácie ESET, od spoločnosti ESET a čaká vás fantastický program. Tešíme sa, že ste sem prišli.
Ja som veľmi zvedavý a treba povedať jednu vec, že sme obklopení informáciami. Väčšina z nás má vo vedeckách zariadenie, ktoré má v sebe toľko informácií, že knižnica v Alexandrii by úplne že závidela. A väčšinou tie zariadenia používame na niečo trochu iné. Pozeráme si videá s mačičkami, ktoré sú oblečené v smiešných kostýmoch a treba povedať, že je to super, ale zároveň nám cez tieto zariadenia do hlavy chodí kopa balastu. Takže sa v tom musíme naučiť zorientovať, musíme sa naučiť nasmerovať smerom k pravde, aby nás jednoducho tie dezinformácie úplne nepohltili.
Áno, a aj o tom to dnes bude. Bude to aj o tom, že veda nie je len o dátach a o výpočtoch, ale veda je hlavne o dôvere, je o tom klásiť tie správne otázky, nebáť sa pýtať, nebáť sa zisťovať a nebáť sa priznať si, že niečo nevieme, pretože len tak sa to vieme naučiť.
Tak, René Descartes pred 400 rokmi povedal, že myslím, teda som, ale to je bezplatná verzia výroku. Celá verzia, keď sa zaplatí, znie takto.
To je dlhšie, aj?
Pochybujem, teda myslím, teda som, teda po latinsky, keď chcete znieť veľmi odborne, dubito ergo cognito, cognito ergo sum. Pochybovať však neznamená, že odmietneš všetko, čo ti ľudia povedia. Pochybovať znamená, že si nepustíš do hlavy úplne hocičo. Zamyslíš sa a dostaneš tam len tie veci, ktoré tam naozaj chceš mať. Takže je dobré byť kritický, je dobré pochybovať, ale to nemá byť tvrdohlavé, že hocičo mi učitelia povedia a učiteľky, ja to budem odmietať. Len sa spýtam, ako viete, že to je naozaj pravda?
Wow. Akože toto si zaslúži potles, podľa mňa učiteľky niektoré boli také, že áno. Teraz si všetkých získal.
Podľa mňa tie učiteľky budú teraz počúvať, že pochybujem a ešte to budú počúvať po latinsky, takže toto bude v skutočnosti veľmi nepríjemné.
Presne tak. No a priatelia, blížime sa k tomu najlepšiemu, to, na čo sme sa tešili, to, na čo sme čakali. Vďaka tomuto, čo práve zažijete, budete môcť povedať, že keď sa vás niekto pýta, že čo ste robili v piatok, tak vy poviete, tak bol som na takej prednáške od človeka, čo má Nobelovú cenu, čo znie fantasticky. Akože toto je jedna z tých vied, prečo som aj ja sem prišiel, lebo tak uvádzal som laureáta Nobelovej ceny. Znie to fantasticky a vy všetci ste v tom s nami, takže na začiatok si vypočujeme niekoho, kto nám pomôže pochopiť, ako fungujú naše mozgy, keď hľadáme tú správnu cestu. A teda privítajme na scéne nositeľa Nobelovej ceny za jeho priekopnícky výskum mozgových mechanizmov, pamäti a priestorovej orientácie. Edvard Moser.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me this. It's an honor to see so many people, so many young people. I hope I can inspire some of you to think that science is fun, and maybe one of you or two of you or maybe 100 of you find out that you want to work on it. So what I'll talk about today is brain science, how the brain works. And I will focus on that because it's one of the most rapidly developing sciences that we have. Our understanding of the brain is moving very fast forward, and we know a lot now that we don't know. There's also a lot that we don't know. It's a long way to go, but we are starting to decoding the brain, understanding how it works. And what I will focus on is especially our senses of space and time, and we'll try to explain why. So let's just start this movie here. This movie shows a brain, an illustration of a brain, and inside the brain there are neurons. That's the name for brain cells. They operate by electricity, so you see white spikes going all around. That is electrical signals. When these come to connections between two cells, as you see here, then that electrical discharge causes some chemicals to go over to the next cell. So that is the fundamentals of how brain cells communicate. They communicate by electricity, electrical signals that pass through the neurons, and then that releases chemicals, they're called neurotransmitters, that then activate the next cell. Now, this is complicated by the fact that there are many, many cells in the brain. So in the human brain, approximately 86 billion neurons, 10 to the 11th. And each of those cells connect to approximately almost 10,000 other cells through these synapses that I showed on the movie. And that gives us approximately almost 10 to the 15th of connections. It is so much that how can we ever find out how this widely distributed electrical and chemical activity leads to the most advanced functions of the brain, such as sensory perception, that means how we perceive or sense things, memories, imagination, thinking, planning, decision-making, language, and so on, and not the least our emotions. So to find out what's the connection between that electrical and chemical activity and the psychology of our minds, then we have to start breaking it down. And one way to start is to focus on some brain functions that are simple, in quotation marks. That means that they are very fundamental. And two of those are our senses of space and time. Today I will focus on space only. We work on both, but space is important because it is absolutely essential for our survival. Both space and time have been suggested by philosophers such as Immanuel Kant, you see the picture here on the screen, to exist almost prior to experience, before experience. So in other sense, this is ingrained into our brains, and they determine the way that we experience the world. So we cannot, and this is consistent with what Kant and other philosophers suggested, but of course they didn't talk about the brain, they talked about the mind. But it's consistent with the idea that we almost can't decouple space. Everything we perceive is through space, and it's very hard to imagine a world without space. And the reason for this is that it must have developed very early in evolution. So here's an illustration of human evolution. Some man walking around in the Stone Age, and then imagine that without the skill of finding his way, he would not be able to find food, obviously, not to be able to find or escape from predators, lions, for example, or not the least to find a woman, so and vice versa, so that we can imagine that this is absolutely essential. Not only applies to humans, actually applies to all animals. And here you see an evolutionary tree for mammals. So, of course, space is not only something that mammals can do. All animals need to know where they are and find their way. But it illustrates the branches of mammals, where you have humans to the top, at the right, and then you see rodents, or rats and mice to the left, and you have bats and you have monkeys. All of these turn out to have quite similar brain mechanisms for knowing where they are and finding their way. And then beyond mammals, there's also actually some of these mechanisms apply even in flies. Even flies have a directional sense. So it must have evolved very, very early. But focusing on mammals and trying to bring that knowledge over to humans, then a lot was done in the early days of psychology. And here I have a picture of one of the earliest psychologists. He was called Edward Tolman. So he lived in, worked at University of California at Berkeley in the 1930s and 1940s and 50s. He studied rats. And just like you have been doing, his rats, they walked in mazes and trying to navigate their way. And when Tolman observed these rats navigating their way, he found that actually they could make shortcuts and they made detours. And maybe that's not so surprising, but it actually was important, because if you can make a shortcut, a quicker connection between A and B, than the one you have learned in the past. That means that you must have some internal map of the environment. And this was a revolutionary discovery. It was very controversial at the time, but it made its way through, and especially in 1971, when John O'Keefe at the University College of London discovered place cells. So this was a breakthrough, and the reason was that perhaps this was a discovery of this map that Tolman had suggested. So what O'Keefe did was to record electrical activity from neurons, the neurons of the kind that you saw in the first movie, but he recorded it in a brain area that's called hippocampus, and he did so in rats. And using rats for the reason that studying brain cells in humans, which is the ultimate goal, is very, very difficult. It's only something you can do in a very small number of epileptic patients who cannot be treated in normal ways and then need to have electrodes in the brain to prepare for surgeries. But, and then you can record from brain cells in the space system of the brain. But it's much easier to use rats, small rats, than where you can find a similar hippocampus. So you see a rat brain to the right there, and the red area there is the hippocampus. It's an important brain area for memory, but turned out also to be important for space. So I will now show you a movie of a rat, and the rat is walking around in a box. It's seen from above, and the rat is collecting small pieces of chocolate, because that's what rats like. They really are fond of chocolate, and we use that as a trick to make them move around. We don't care about the chocolate as such, but the rat moves around, and then at the same time we are listening to the neural activity of one single cell. So this is what O'Keefe did in the 1970s. Now you hear the activity, the electrical activity of one particular cell in the hippocampus. And at the same time as the cell is electrically active, you also see red dots appearing. And what you already now see is that this particular cell in the brain is active only when the rat is in the upper left part of the box, in one particular place. And because it's active only in one place, then O'Keefe called these cells place cells. And then you see other place cells in color there, so 10 different place cells. And red color means high activity, blue color means low activity. And you see that different place cells are active in different places. So that means that the combined activity of all of these cells can tell someone who listens to this activity where the animal is, because the combined activity is different in different places. And that then led O'Keefe to the right there, and Lynn Nadell, a colleague of him, to suggest in 1978 actually that this was the basis of the spatial map that exists in the brain. And then other parts of the map were discovered. So this is later, this is in late 1980s and 1990, when direction cells were found. So these two people, Jeff Taub and Jim Rank, recorded activity from another area nearby the hippocampus, and then accidentally hit some cells that were only active when the rat, it's still a rat, was turning its head in a certain direction. So some cells, like this one, is active only at, in this case, 270 degrees compared to the room. It's not really compared to north and south in the world, but with a certain direction, and others were active in other directions, and yet other direction. And together, they covered all the environments, providing direction, whereas the place cells provided location. So probably these must speak together. And that then, in 2005, led us to look in an area that's called entorhinal cortex. It's the blue area there, because that connects these two brain areas, where the presubiculum, as it's called, where you have the direction cells, and hippocampus, where you have the place cells. And what we found, again, by recording activity from rats that run around in a box. So now you see this particular cell is active also at certain locations, but those locations form clusters. They are active at many locations. And you can see the pattern if you now look at the right part, because in gray in the background, you see where the rat has been walking over 30 minutes to collect its chocolate pieces. And in black, you see each place where the cell was active. I mean, firing a pop-pop-pop signal, like the one you heard in the movie. And you can see the triangular pattern that is forming. It's a very regular pattern that repeats all over the space. So almost like a coordinate system. It's just that here we have 3 axes instead of 2. Because it forms a grid that covers the environment, we then call them grid cells. And the smallest unit of that grid is actually a rhombus. So you see, because the triangles are either standing or lying, so it's not the same, but it's a rhombus that repeats all over the environment. So it's a rhomboid coordinate system that can be used to find location, because if you have on certain conditions, you can actually infer from these cells where the animal is. But I want to spend a few minutes on where we are today. So this is a long time ago. The latest was in 2005. So for many years, we recorded the activity of just one cell at a time, so that was what was possible. But now, there are very small probes that you can insert into the brain. They are thinner than a hair, so they just go between the cells, and they pick up the electrical activity. But these are not just wires like they were before. Now they are small computer chips. It's just very, very thin chips that are so small that they don't damage the cells, and then they pick up the electrical activity. But now, instead of from 1 or 2 or 3 cells, it is from many thousands of cells at the same time. And this shows the activity of, in this case, just 149 cells that were active at the same time. And so it's time on the x-axis, and each row is one cell, and you see that it's active when it's black, and then it's not active when it's white. But then this allows us, for this subset of cells, to look at the combination of activity. So at one particular time, for example, in the red times bin there, you can ask, what is the combination of activity? Now, if you have 149 cells, you can plot the activity of each cell on one axis in a coordinate system. But if they are independent, then you actually have 149. You need 149 axes to describe the activity of these cells at any given time. And it's not easy to work in a 149-dimensional coordinate system. If you have 10 locations just on each axis, that means 10 to the 149th combinations, which is astronomical. That's actually beyond astronomical, because the number of atoms in the known universe is 10 to the 80th. So it's so many possible ways to combine information. And that's part of the reason why the brain is so powerful. But we are lucky because we don't need all these 149 dimensions, because most of the cells, they are actually strongly related. So you can break it down, and these are mathematical techniques that you can actually break it down from many, many dimensions to just a few and still describe much of the activity. And then you will see the activity going around in this low-dimensional, or in this case, 3-dimensional coordinate system. And then it can make it much easier to study how the activity goes around in the combined activity of the cells. This is what we are doing now, so that mathematics has started to really make its way into brain sciences. And what you see to the bottom is a point cloud, where each dot is the combined activity of those 149 cells, grid cells. And then each point is different time, and then you see a black trace. This is how the activity moves around. And what you can see is that this point cloud has a certain shape. It has the shape of a torus, and the torus is a donut, right? So this means actually that the combined activity of all these grid cells operates on a torus. So that then means that the spatial map in the brain is a donut, it's a torus. It is continuous in 2 dimensions, and then the activity moves around on that donut when the rat is walking around in the environment. So it provides some answer to Tolman's question about the spatial map, but it's maybe not the map that we thought early on. It is like a GPS, so I usually don't use the term GPS because it's similar to GPS, but not entirely similar. But still, it uses distance and direction information to move around on this internal map in the brain. And I wanted to conclude then by putting up this illustration here, because the fact that there is such a torus-shaped map, internal map in the brain, suggests several things. So first of all, we all know that the world is not flat. And the same with the internal map in the brain. What would happen if the rat moved around in a brain map that was flat? So theoretical models have suggested that a way to create an activity in the map, an activity that moves around on the map, just as the rat walks around in the environment, or as if I walk around here on the stage, then in my map there would be a torus-shaped map, and the activity on that map would move around on the map in the same way as I move. But it would be then a problem. What happens if you come to the end of the world, like the bottom one in the middle? And the nice solution is that if you have a circular map, that means if you have a torus, then you will never come to the end of the world. And a torus is the perfect way to do it. If you had a sphere like the Earth, it wouldn't be good, because the positions would become closer and closer as you get to the North and the South Pole. But the torus, then you can actually have a map that keeps the same dimensions all the way. It also suggests that because this map exists when we sleep as well, even when we sleep, the activity moves around on the map, then it is quite consistent with the idea that we can trace back to the early philosophers, that brain maps are there from the beginning, probably even before we are born. So this was the situation, this is the situation today, but the first part of what I mentioned, the grid cells, that was the reason why in 2014 then I got this text message. I didn't get the phone call because I was on a plane, but I got a text message from the secretary of the Nobel Committee that said in Swedish, then call me as soon as possible. You can, then I eventually found out what that was, and that led to some very busy days in 2014. And also in December 2014, and I'll just finish then, since I have 17 minutes over time. No, 15 seconds left, I think. Then the people who have done much of the work together, I've done this with Edvard Moser, who sits there from number 3 from the right, and then this is the group that we work together. And I just want to conclude by saying that to broaden up a little bit. So what I do is work on the brain, but there are many sciences, of course, that are interesting. They're all important because this is knowledge that is developed by objective methods, where you do experiments, you test what predictions, and then you adjust your predictions, your ideas, based on what you see in the experiments. So this is information that we can trust, and we try to be as objective, as critical as we can. And I think it's very important, even for anyone who doesn't find that they want to do science themselves. It is important to understand how science works, because today, especially when we live in a world where there is a lot of information available, and not all is actually objectively tested, then you have to be able to sort the truth from the non-truth. So with that, I hope that I've given a short impression of what we are doing in one of the neuroscience labs in the world. And neuroscience is an expanding field all over the world. And for those who are young, I'm sure that there will be plenty of opportunities to either work with neuroscience or learn about neuroscience. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Can we have 2 questions before you?
Yeah.
You are navigating out of the stage.
I hope I find the way, yes.
So, 2 brief questions. Now everyone is craving a donut. So unfortunately, if we are using, for example, Google Maps all the time, are we losing the brain capabilities?
It's an excellent question. I wonder about the same myself. To some extent, I would say yes, to some extent, no. So I begin with a no. The brain system for navigation is so deeply worked into our brain and into our genes that we don't quite lose it, even if we don't use it very much. We still use it to find a way between the living room and the kitchen, right? So it's not that we don't use it. But there is also a role for for training. And if you're on orientation, for example, you get very good at this.
Okay.
So that improvement of natural navigation, that doesn't happen if you always use Google Maps, right? So we just learn to go left and right. To some extent, I would actually probably say yes.
And do you think some of the students will navigate themselves into your research group?
That would be fun, sure. I hope that more broadly, some may navigate themselves into neuroscience or brain science, and some into science. And I also hope, that's the most important, is that everyone keeps an excitement for science and knows how science works. That's the most important of all, because knowing about science and being critical is also important for a healthy democracy. So it's important for everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Edvard Moser.
Wow. Konečne viem, čo robí môj mozog, keď hľadám čokoládu po byťoch dom.
Keď hľadáš po zemi porozhadzovanú
Tak
čokoládu.
po zemi nie, ale vieš, kúsok je niekedy v kuchyni, niečo si nechám aj v izbe, a keď sa tak navigujem po byte, po miestnosti.
Potom ťa prihlasím, aby ti mohli poťahať tie drátiky do hlavy a budú aj na tebe sledovať, že...
Puká niekde.
Kedy to
Fantastická prednáška. A pokiaľ ste všetkému rozumeli, tak perfektne, že ste zatlieskali, a pokiaľ nie, tak sa musíte tváriť, že tomu rozumiete, ono to potom vyzerá strašne dobre. Takže super, že ste tu. Je tu so mnou aj Samuel Kováčik, ktorý si hovorí vedátor. Nie je to len tak prostý moderátor ako ja, on tu totiž to bude aj prednášať. Je to popularizátor vedy, autor niekoľkých bestsellerov už teraz, dá sa povedať, a zároveň človek, ktorý podľa mňa svojou tvorbou a svojim prinášaním vedeckého obsahu, lebo si aj teoretický fyzik, podľa mňa zlepšuje kvalitu života na Slovensku, pretože sa učíme, pretože spoznávame, a on si pre vás pripravil prednášku. Veľký potlesk pre Sama.
Teraz sa rýchlo z moderátora musí stať prednášajúci, aby sa vám to neplietlo. Takže, tadá, prednášateľ Samo. Ja som dostal za úlohu porozprávať vám, ako vzniká veda, a ja som vám strašne chcel rozprávať o čiernych dierach. Takže som dostal šalamúnsky nápad, že ja vám na príklade, ako sme objavili čierne diery, porozprávam o tom, ako vlastne vzniká veda. Dobrá správa je, že v podstate prebehneme jednu maturitnú otázku, takže dúfam, že vám trošku teraz ľahčím rozhodovanie, či ísť alebo neísť maturovať z fyziky. Urobíme si taký speedrun teórie gravitácie, že ako sme vlastne objavili gravitáciu, kde to celé začalo a do akých úplne totálne absurdných miest nás to dostalo. Keď chceme začať historicky, tak tuto sa treba vrátiť naozaj sakramentsky ďaleko. Skúste si na chvíľku predstaviť, ako by vyzeral váš dnešný deň, keby ste žili 10 000 rokov dozadu, alebo 15 000. Žiadne také, že mi zazvoní budík o 7 a potom nastúpim do dopravného prostriedku a niekam sa odveziem a medzi tým som si pripravil jedlo vďaka elektrine a tak ďalej. Nič z toho nemáte. Vstanete a zrazu vybehnete von a nečakane prší. A potom idete na miesto, kde boli včera, ja neviem, hríby alebo niečo, čo sa dá jesť, a už to tam není. Niekto iný to vyzbieral, zrazu je tam ale nejaké nebezpečné zviera, ktoré vás ohrozuje. A celá vaša existencia je totálne chaotická a nepredvídateľná. Nejaké veci sa opakujú, ale väčšina vecí vo vašom okolí nemá žiadnu organizáciu. Nepoznáte žiadny spôsob, ako merať čas. Všetko vás prekvapuje. Až zrazu príde noc a noc je presným protikladom. Noc je zdrojom poriadku. Napríklad sa môžete spoľahnúť na to, že keď príde noc, tak potom znova príde ráno. Že človek po tom, čo 100-krát za život vstal, tak vie, že keď pôjde 100-krát do postele, tak znova 10 000 pôjde do jaskyne, tak znova na ďalší deň ho bude čakať slnko na oblohe, lebo je to niečo, čo sa deje pravidelne. Iným príkladom pravidelnosti sú hviezdy, ktoré pravidelne nič nerobia. Objavujú sa na tom istom mieste na oblohe, počas noci sa jemne pomalinky hýbu a potom zase zmiznú a na ďalší deň sa objavia úplne predpokladaným spôsobom tam, kde majú byť. Mesiac, tiež podobné, chvíľku je na oblohe tu, chvíľku tu, najprv ho vidíme celý, potom sa zmenšuje, zväčšuje a tak ďalej. Znova robí niečo predvídateľné a pravidelné a tak, ako sa mesiac správal prvý mesiac života, to prvé bolo s veľkým a to druhé s malým, tak ako sa správal prvý mesiac narodenia života, tak sa bude správať aj posledný. Jednoducho spln, pekne prechádza cez všetky fázy, až kým príde ďalší spln. Nočná obloha bola zdrojom poriadku. A v poriadku sa dajú hľadať pravidlá. Dajú sa hľadať zákonitosti. Veľká časť dávnych archeologických nálezísk a podobne sú miesta, ktoré nejako súvisia s nočnou oblohou. Napríklad, že keď idete na Stonehenge, tak Stonehenge je zaujímavý práve tým, že v nejakom konkrétnom období je pekne cez tie obrovské šutre vidno slnko na správnom mieste. Toto je disk z Nebry, ktorý bol objavený nedaleko od nás v Nemecku. A to, čo na ňom asi dokážete identifikovať, je mesiac a slnko. A zároveň tam vidíte hviezdy. Teda nie je úplne jasné, či to je slnko, alebo či to je mesiac splne, ale je tam vidno takú výraznú skupinku hviezd. A túto výraznú skupinku hviezd viete vidieť na oblohe aj teraz, volajú sa Plejady. A to, čo robí tento disk, je, že vám synchronizuje dva rôzne kalendáre. Máte proste jeden kmeň, ktorý sa organizuje podľa toho, ako plynú dni a ako sa menia ročné obdobia. Máte druhý kmeň, ktorý sa naviguje podľa mesiaca a ich kalendáre budú rozladené. A tento disk vám hovorí, že keď sa mesiac objaví na oblohe v tejto fáze, tak si posunte kalendár o toľko a toľko. Takže normálne, že vznikol vedný odbor archeoastronómie, ktorý sa snaží interpretovať dávne artefakty a ich význam, čo nám vlastne hovoria o nočnej oblohe. Teraz trošku poskočíme dopredu v čase a nie až tak ďaleko v priestore. V roku 1600 pobehoval po Prahe tento človek, Johann Kepler, ktorý sa škrabal po hlave, lebo dostal strašne ťažkú úlohu od svojho zamestnávateľa, supervizora, ktorý sa volal Tycho Brahe. Tycho Brahe je taká strašne zvláštna figurka. Miniem na toto 30 sekúnd, ale on bol najprv císarským astronómom v Dánsku, kde sa nejako poštval s miestnym vladarom, tak sa kompletne odsťahoval, tam mal obrovský zámok, kde organizoval veľké večierky, mal soba, ktorého na tých večierkoch opíjal a ten sob zomrel po tom, čo opitý spadol zo schodov. A keď som to teraz písal do knihy, tak sa ma editorka spýtala, či tam nemá byť slovo sok a nie sob, a ja, že nebol to sob. Takže to bol proste veľmi divný človek, ktorý bol ale považovaný za najlepšieho astronóma v čase, kým bol objavený teleskop. Viem, že to je trochu povedať, že aj najlepší cyklista, kým bol objavený bicykel, ale v skutočnosti aj bez teleskopu sa dá robiť zaujímavá astronomia. Tycho Brahe bol úplne skvelý, z toho Dánska odišiel do Prahy, tiež znova na cisársky dvor, kde sa stal cisárskym astronómom. A tam zaúkoloval Keplera takouto úlohou, že skús zistiť, po akej trajektórii sa presne pohybuje Mars okolo Slnka. Mars na oblohe viete nájsť aj voľným okom, je to viditeľne červenčia, pomerne výrazne veľká bodka, keď tak si pomôžete nejakou aplikáciou. A Keplerovou úlohou bolo zistiť, že ako presne sa pohybuje. Ľudia mali rôzne modely, najprv back in the days používali kružnice. Mysleli si, že planety chodia okolo niečoho, najprv si mysleli, že okolo Zeme, potom okolo Slnka po kružniciach a zistili, že nie. Je to niečo trochu zložitejšie. Tak čo spravia Gréci, ktorí sú úplne proste do geometrie, tak oni povedia, že sú to kružnice na kružniciach, takzvané epicykly. Vyzerá to ako taká špirálka. Keď máte niekto dlhé vlasy, mne sa to ťažko predstavuje, ale dlhé vlasy s takou špirálou, tak zhruba po takých trajektóriách si ľudia mysleli, že tie planety chodia proste také vrtulky. Nebolo to úplne presné a Kepler dostal za úlohu, že zistí, po akých trajektóriách teda chodí ten Mars. Tycho Brahe mu zadal túto úlohu a zomrel. A na rozdiel od ľudí, ktorým keď o 6 padla, tak zabudú na to, že majú nejakú robotu, tak Kepler prácu dorábal dlho po tom, čo jeho zadávateľ zomrel, teda jej zadávateľ zomrel, a dotiahol to do úspešného konca. A v podstate jednoduchý nápad, ktorý dostal, je, že čo tak namiesto kružníc použiť elipsy. To vyzerá byť tak jednoduchý nápad, že to si ho vôbec pamätáme, kvôli takto jednoduchému nápadu skúsiť opísať pohyb planét pomocou elips. V skutočnosti tam bol obrovský intelektuálny skok. Dovtedy si totiž ľudia mysleli, že nebo je niečo dokonalé. Kružnice sú dokonalé pravidelné, keď ich otáčate, stále vyzerajú rovnako a očakávali, že na tých dokonalých nebesiach bude prebiehať pohyb po dokonalých krivkách, teda po kružniciach. Takže v skutočnosti, keď Kepler povedal, že a či to náhodou nie sú elipsy, tak on v podstate, že až riskoval svoj život, lebo spochybnil dokonalý nebeský rád. A asi mu to mal trošku v génoch, lebo jeho matka bola obvinená z bosoráctva, takže celkom zariskoval týmto nápadom, že či to namiesto kružníc nie sú elipsy. A sformuloval postupne 3 Keplerové zákony, on to volal zákony, ale my to voláme Keplerové zákony, kde vlastne hovorí o tom, že ako sa planety pohybujú po elipsách, ako rýchlo sa pohybujú v týchto elipsách a ako ich rýchlo závisí od toho, aká veľká elipsa to je. Takže napríklad Zem a Jupiter majú inú dĺžku obežnej dráhy a Kepler to všetko krásne zmapoval, vďaka tomu, že si na to sadol a urobil si v tom poriadok. No a potom prišiel naozajstný macher, Isaac Newton, ktorý nedošiel do Prahy, ktorý podľa všetkého nikdy neopustil Anglicko, že on bol trošku taký bojazlivý, kým jeho školiteľ mimochodom bojoval s pirátmi, tak on nikdy neopustil Anglicko, niektoré vlastnosti sa neposunuli zo školiteľa na žiaka. A Newton prišiel s gravitačným zákonom. Našiel jednoduchý vzorec, a teraz viem, že toto ste tu nečakali, že budete mať vzorčeky, ale tak sorry, keď chcete zmaturovať, aspoň tento jeden treba poznať. A zistil z toho zaujímavú vec, že planety alebo že objekty sa vplyvom gravitácie nepohybujú iba po kružniciach a elipsách, ale aj po iných dráhach, ako napríklad parabolách alebo hyperbolách. A tieto krivky majú svoje meno, volajú sa kuželosečky. Čiže keď tuto dnes skončíme a pôjdete domov, tak si môžete kúpiť zmrzlinu. A keď zoberiete ten kornutok a prerežete ho nejakým spôsobom, tak na tom okraji dostanete krivku. A tej krivke sa hovorí kuželosečka. A Newton teda zistil, že planéty sa pohybujú po dráhach, ktoré získame krájaním kornutkov. On nepoužil ten kornutok, ale zistil, že planéty sa môžu pohybovať po veľmi rozmanitých trajektóriách. Niektoré sú planéty, niekedy sa tak pohybujú kométy, asteroidy a podobne. Takže poďme si urobiť zatiaľ takú rekapituláciu. Máme nejaké pozorovania o vesmíre, ktoré nám pomáhajú formovať teórie a teórie potom predvídajú pozorovania. Čiže najprv prišiel Kepler, pozeral sa na tie dáta o pohybe planét, sformoval zákony o eliptickom pohybe, potom prišiel Newton, dal to dokopy ako teóriu a z tej teórie nám vypadli ďalšie zaujímavosti. Napríklad, že kométy budú chodiť po eliptických krivkách, ktoré sú veľmi natiahnuté a tak ďalej. Takže máme ľavá noha sú pozorovania, práva sú teórie a ideme na preskačku jedna, druhá a navzájom sa posúvajú vpred. Teórie redukujú dáta. Pred Keplerom a Newtonom bolo robenie astronómie o tom, že ste mali proste celý byt, alebo kde oni bývali, plný kníh, kde boli proste tabulky. A keď ste niečo chceli vedieť, tak ste museli nalistovať stranu 763 a tam sa pozrieť a zistiť, že aha, teraz nám vyjde slnko tam a tam. Vďaka Newtonovmu zákonu sa tie 1000-stranové grimoáre astronomických tabuliek zredukovali na jeden jednoduchý zákon. A vďaka tomu je učenie sa fyziky oveľa ľahšie, ako učenie sa napríklad biológie, kde sa naspamäť musíte učiť delenie a tak ďalej, alebo maturita z literatúry, kde musíte naspamäť vedieť všetky diela. Keď chcete vedieť fyziku, stačí vedieť ten jeden zákon a všetko ostatné je v ňom obsiahnuté. Takže toto je taký môj marketingový teaser. Teórie redukujú dáta, redukujú počet informácií, za to by sme mali byť veľmi vďační. No a zároveň teórie obsahuje veci, ktoré sme tam nevložili. Nikto netušil, že napríklad kométy môžu ísť aj po hyperbolických dráhach. A hľa, pred pár rokmi sme pár takých objavili a boli predvídané presne na základe Newtonovho gravitačného zákona. Takže teórie fungujú trošku ako zázrak, obsahujú viac vecí, ako sme do nich vložili. Viem, že vy už ste taká modernejšia generácia, takže niekomu slovná rekapitulácia nemusí stačiť, takže mám aj takú obrázkovú. Úplne nultá verzia porozumenia vesmíru bolo, že začali sme si všímať nejaké pravidlá, ktoré boli napríklad v tom disku z Nebry znázornené. Potom prišlo už také trochu lepšie formulovanie nejakých pravidelností vo forme Keplerových zákonov. Potom prišiel ten Newton a teraz nám chýba niekto, že kto bude ten ultimátny, ten gigachat, ktorý to všetko proste spojil dokopy a vyžmykal z toho úplne novú brutálnu teóriu. A tým je samozrejme Albert Einstein. A on toto nafúkol úplne na maximálnu možnú úroveň. Kým dovtedy naše chápanie vesmíru napredovalo hlavne vďaka tomu, že sme pozerali na oblohu a snažili sme sa formovať nejaké zákony, tak Einstein sa v podstate zatvoril do kancelárie, pozeral na tie zákony, písal si a rozmýšľal, že či dávajú dokopy zmysel. A jemu tam niečo úplne nesedelo. On vedel, že nič sa nemôže pohybovať rýchlejšie ako svetlo a zároveň v Newtonovej teórii gravitácia funguje nekonečnou rýchlosťou. Že keby zmizlo slnko, okamžite sa všetky planéty rozletia svojimi smermi. A nepasovalo to s jeho teóriou. Takže on sedel nad rovnicami a rozmýšľal, ako by mohla vyzerať teória gravitácie, tak aby bola konzistentná aj s Newtonovou teóriou, ale zároveň aby rešpektovala, že nič nemôže ísť rýchlejšie ako svetlo. A po dlhých rokoch, vybavený vtedy modernou, dnes už štandardnou matematikou, objavil novú teóriu, ktorú voláme všeobecná teória relativity. Všeobecná kvôli tomu, že obsahuje aj gravitáciu, obsahuje maximálnu povolenú rýchlosť, rýchlosť svetla a všetko dáva dokopy zmysel. Jediné na tom divné je, že to kompletne prepísalo pravidlá hry. V jeho interpretácii gravitácia v podstate neexistuje. Gravitácia je dôsledok toho, že sa pohybujeme v časopriestore, ktorý je neustále zakrivovaný hmotou a energiou. Takže nie, že hmota vytvára gravitáciu, hmota deformuje časopriestor a v tomto deformovanom časopriestore sa pohybujeme, ako keby tu bola gravitácia. Samozrejme, že toto, keď mu niekto povie, toto keby len prišiel s tým, že gravitácia neexistuje a je to dôsledok zakrivenia časopriestoru, tak mu povedia, že Einstein si de lulu a nebudeme ťa počúvať, choď do ústavu alebo čo. Tak on musel prísť nejakými vysvetleniami, nejakými pozorovaniami, kde jeho teória dáva správne výsledky a Newtonova nedáva. Prvý rýchly výsledok, ktorý získal, je, že Merkúr nerobí úplne pekné elipsy okolo Slnka. Že tie elipsy, po ktorých ide Merkúr, sa tak pomalinky stáčajú, po malých kúskoch, volá sa to precesia perihelia Merkúra. A Newtonova teória to nedokáže úplne vysvetliť. Einstein to spočítal úplne presne a z jeho novej teórie zakriveného časopriestoru vypadlo, že Merkúr by sa mal pohybovať okolo Slnka presne tak, ako sa pohybuje. Druhá predpoveď, ktorú urobil, bolo, že gravitácia dokáže ohýbať svetelné lúče. Toto v princípe máte aj v Newtonovej teórii, ale niekde musíte prižmuriť očkom, dúfať, že matikárka akurát není v triede a urobiť, že 0 deleno 0. Škrtnú to niekde. To je trochu podvádzanie, ale dá sa to a nedostanete správny výsledok. V Einsteinovej teórii vychádza, že keď máte svetelný lúč, ktorý ide rovno a dáte mu do cesty niečo hmotné, tak on sa jemne ohne. No tak čo máme po ruke pomerne hmotné? Napríklad slnko. Takže Einsteinové tvrdenie je, že keby ste pustili svetelný lúč okolo Slnka, tak ten lúč by sa mierne ohol. V praxi to znamená, že si vyberiete na oblohe nejakú hviezdu a keď je vedľa nej Slnko, tak sa zdá, ako keby sa tá hviezda na oblohe trošku pohla, lebo ten lúč je zlomený a prichádza ako keby z trochu iného smeru. Čo je problém s pozorovaním hviezd, keď je Slnko na oblohe? Že je vtedy deň, takže nič neuvidíte. Až na to, že keď tam príde mesiac a to Slnko kompletne zakrie, čiže keď máme úplné zatmenie Slnka, tak zrazu je vidno aj tie hviezdy, ktoré sú tesne okolo Slnka a môžete vidieť, je to tam znázornené takými paličkami, že tá hviezda, ktorá sa bežne na oblohe nachádza na jednom mieste, je naozaj v tomto prípade vizuálne posunutá o niekoľko stupňov. Hviezda poskočila na oblohe zdanlivo kvôli tomu, že Slnko ohlo lúče, ktoré z tej hviezdy prichádzalo. Použili sme Newtonovú teóriu na to, aby sme predvídali, kedy príde toto zatmenie Slnka, ľudia museli byť nachystaní, ale presne pozorovali také poskočenie hviezd na oblohe, ako predvídal Einstein a z neho sa v rámci jedného zatmenia stala hviezda svetového rádu. A keď sa potom ľudia začali pýtať, no dobre, tak tomu Einsteinovi asi veríme, čo ďalšie sa nachádza v jeho teórii, čo z nej ešte vieme vyžmýkať, podobne ako sme z toho Newtona vyžmýkali tie iné trajektórie, tie hyperboly a podobne, tak Einsteinova gravitačná teória nám dala tak šialene veľa vecí. Napríklad nám ukázala, že vesmír nemusí byť statický, môže sa zväčšovať a to znamená, že bol kedysi menší a má nejaký svoj počiatok, ktorý dnes voláme veľký tresk. Rovnako nám táto teória ukázala, ako sa vplyvom gravitácie mení plynutie času, takže v mojej hlave a v mojich nohách beží čas trošku inak, ten rozdiel je malinký, počas môjho života to urobí rozdiel asi miliardinu sekundy. Nie je to veľa, ale je to merateľný efekt dobrými zariadeniami. Asi najdivnejší dôsledok, ktorý nám priniesla Einsteinová teória, sú čierne diery. Je to tak divný dôsledok, že sa dokonca priečil samotnému Einsteinovi, Eddingtonovi, ktorý pomohol potvrdiť jeho teóriu a mnohým ďalším. Čierna diera je objekt, ktorý je tak hustý, že z jeho gravitačného pôsobenia nedokáže uniknúť ani len svetlo. Na hranici čiernej diery, na tzv. Horizonte udalostí, to je tu, zastavuje čas. Keď tam začnete padať, tak z pohľadu vzdialeného pozorovateľa zamrznete v čase. Nič z tohto nedávalo zmysel a až postupne prichádzali pozorovania, ktoré nás presvedčili o prítomnosti čiernych diel v našom vesmíre. Napríklad sme videli miesto vo vesmíre, kde vyzerá, že není nič a okolo toho nič krúžili hviezdy. Takto vyzerala, takto bola objavená supermasívna čierna diera v strede našej galaxie. Prvý definitívny dôkaz priniesol experiment alebo pozorovanie, ktoré viedol Kip Thorne, ktorého možno poznáte z ESET Award, ktorý zachytil gravitačné vlny, ktoré vyvolala zrážka dvoch čiernych dier. Za to storočie od Einsteina sa z niečoho nevídaného stalo niečo, čo je stále nevídané, lebo je to dokonale čierne a neviditeľné, ale už známe a súčasť bežnej fyziky. Takže ako sa teda robí veda? Krok číslo 1, správ pozorovania. Krok číslo 2, daj dokopy nejakú teóriu. A typicky krok číslo 1 a krok číslo 2 robia iní ľudia. Tým prvým hovoríme experimentátori a tým druhým hovoríme teoretici. A často si to podávajú, že ty urob pokus, ty urob teóriu a takto sa dohadzujú. A toto je niečo, čo ľúbia robiť hlavne teoretici, žmýkajú teórie úplne na maximum. Pozrú sa, do akých extrémov niečo môžem natiahnuť, kedy to začne praskať, kedy sa tam začnú objavovať nové a zaujímavé veci. Napíname teórie na prasknutie, aby sme sa pozreli, aké iné nečakané veci v našom vesmíre môžu existovať. Presne takto Einstein objavil svoju teóriu, rozmýšľal nad tým, ako by asi vyzeral svetelný lúč, keby som vedľa neho letel na rakete a tak ďalej. Tieto divné, absurdné situácie nám hovoria, ako vyzerá naozaj svet okolo nás. Dobrá správa je, že na základe tohto sa dá profitovať. Keď pochopíme, ako funguje svet okolo nás, tak ho vieme prispôsobovať svojim potrebám, vieme robiť lieky, ktoré nás liečia, vieme robiť lietadlá, ktoré vzlietnú a pristanú tam, kde chceme, aby pristali, vieme robiť počítače, ktoré nám spracujú obrovské množstvo informácií. Len vďaka tomu, že sme postupne pozorovali svet a robili sme o ňom teórie. Toto je vec, ktorú typicky hovorím, že keď treba napísať grant, že ideme robiť vedu, aby z toho boli nejaké benefity. Skutočná pravda, a toto prosím nevynášajte z tejto miestnosti, je, že dôvod, prečo to robia vedci, je, že je to strašná sranda. Beriete teórie, napínate ich na prasknutie, skúšate, čo sa stane, keď do tejto škatule natlačíte toľko svetla, koľko sa len dá, ako to bude interagovať, čo sa stane, keď rozvibrujete krabicu správnou frekvenciou, kedy sa rozpadne, čo musíte urobiť s baktériami, aby sa prestali množiť. Toto sú proste že milióny zábavných vecí, ktoré môžete skúmať a skúšate, kde niečo funguje inak, ako sme si dovtedy mysleli. Hľadáte, že kde sú limity nášho poznania, nášho ako celého ľudstva a tie limity sa snažíte o malý kúsok posunúť. Takže to hlavné ponaučenie z robenia vedy je, že veda je strašná zábava na robenie. Ďakujem za pozornosť. Musím sa prezrieť rýchlo.
Perfektné. Normálne si mi to predal. 3 veci som si zapamätal. Okrem toho, že sú tam memečka, použil si slovo gigachat a delulu, akože obrovský potlesk, podľa mňa je za toto. Niekoľko študentov bolo vtedy takých, že...
Hej, umelá inteligencia mi poradila, ako vyzerať pod 30.
Išlo ti to, bolo to perfektné. Takisto memečko v prezentácii Fantázia. 3 veci si mi predal ako marketing študovania fyziky. Prvá, ktorej som neveril, že je to ľahšie ako literatúra. Čo si tu navrávame. Druhá, že to strašná sranda, to sme videli, že sa
Poznáš aj ty zo supervedy, podľa mňa?
To poznáme aj zo supervedy, tak tento človek stojí za tým, aby ja som tam nehovoril blúdy, pokiaľ viete, tak ja robím takú šovku, tak tento človek je ten mozog za tým a to ste mohli vidieť, hovoril o tom perfektne. A tretia, to ma hrozne bavilo, že ty keď povieš niečo dostatočne múdre, tak oni potom povedia, že to je Keplerov zákon. Vieš, že proste dajú tam to tvoje meno. Tak to je podľa mňa veľká motivácia pre ľudí, ktorí by chceli študovať fyziku, že keď sa budú snažiť a prídu s niečím fakt prelomovým, tak tomu môžu pripísať svoje meno. Tak to je taká motivácia pre vás všetkých.
Tak. No čo, ideme na skutočných odborníkov a odborníčky, ktorí nám teraz prenesú ten pohľad z toho vesmírneho pohľadu na svet nanotechnológií, na svet mikroskopický.
Pozrieme sa na to zblízka. Áno, niečo malé ideme rozoberať. Je to o nanomateriáloch, o technológiách budúcnosti, ktoré formujú dnešok.
Tak a Valeria Nicolosi, ktorá pôsobí mimochodom na Trinity College v Dubline, skvelé miesto, je držiteľkou 8 ERC grantov. A teraz vy máte to šťastie, že ešte neviete, čo sú toto za granty. To je niečo, že ako Grammy vo svete vedy. Takže si predstavte, ako sem napochoduje s takými 8 soškami, tak to je takto významná osobnosť vo svete vedy.
Áno, a vedie výskumnú skupinu zameranú na pokročilé materiály, čo neviem, čo úplne je, ale to sa hádam dozvieme. Takže obrovský potlesk a privítajte našu ďalšiu speak.
Valeria Nicolosi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Such an energetic audience. It's a pleasure to be here today and get to meet the young future, right? So we have a lot of hope on you. So I hope you're going to return this hope back with facts. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some new nuances in materials development. So we have gone through a lot of different ages in history. We've been through the Stone Age. We are all aware of that. We all studied this at school. Then we went through the Bronze Age, Iron Age. And the thing is, the real question I would like to ask you is, What do you think is our age today? In the world we are living, we could all have different answers, right? Some of you might say, well, it's the green energy age. We hear a lot about sustainability, the need to go green. So that is an aspect. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer-driven society, it's really another aspect of our life, of our everyday life nowadays. The Silicon Age. All of you in this room have a mobile phone, a computer, a smartwatch, everything that is portable, electronic. I see phones taking photos. This is clearly the Silicon Age because all these chips that are in your electronics are based on silicon. We have a digital age asset. Tell us all about it. We have bioengineering age. We actually had Edward this morning talking about neuroscience and the next steps in neuroscience. So there are a lot of different ways we could describe the era we're living. The actual common point, perhaps, in many of those things is actually nanotechnology and nanomaterials. I would say, if you ask me, that we are in the nanotechnology era. And why is that? Because nanomaterials and nanotechnology are pretty much embedded in mostly everything we are using and everything we are developing. But what does nanotechnology mean? We use materials at a small scale. What does it mean, small scale? Small could be a centimeter, a millimeter, a decimal of a millimeter. We're actually talking about materials that are 100,000 times smaller than the width of a hair. So this is the type of materials we're talking about. And you might be happy to hear that we have a lot of control. We know how to handle a lot of these materials, even if they are so small. So nanotechnology is actually embedded in a lot of the things we use today. We have nanotechnology embedded in bio, in infrastructure, in digital, in energy, of course, all the appliances that you're using, and so forth. But I would like you to visualize what it means, nano, because it's all very well and good to talk about 100,000 times smaller than the width of a human hair. The truth is that it's very, very difficult to imagine how small that is. And the thing is, that is me sitting in one of the benches at Trinity College Dublin. This is me, real size. What happened if I shrunk 10 times? I actually end up about 16 centimeters, as you see on my back. What happened if I go 10 times smaller? I actually end up about that size compared to the smartphones that you're using. What if I actually shrink down again 10 times? I end up that size, almost invisible, and so forth. I go down to the microchips that are actually in the making of what makes your mobile phones working. And then if I shrink another 10 times, this is what is inside your chips, your transistors, the transistors inside your mobile phones. What happens 10 times more? I end up even more into details. This is all a silicon transistor part, even smaller. Here we are about 16 nanometers tall. And what happens if I go another 10 times smaller? I actually start seeing atoms. This is a real image taken at a microscope of how a piece of a transistor looks like, and there, how small I am. And then again, this is not completely nano. We can go another 10 times smaller, and I end up being pretty much the size of an atom. And this is pretty much the size of the materials I work with and my research group works with. So the whole concept actually was developed very, very long time ago by this very, very visionary gentleman, Richard Freeman. In 1959, he predicted that there was still plenty of room at the bottom. It meant that we could still use our knowledge to shrink things down a lot. And he was right. By the time he was saying these things, computers were taking the space of rooms. And then it started shrinking and shrinking, using knowledge to actually go where we are today. And I can tell you, we're going much farther. And I give you a little glimpse of that in a few minutes. So this is exactly why I say that we're today living a nano era. Nanomaterials, materials at the scale of atoms, are actually already embedded in our everyday life without us knowing. So we actually have nanomaterials used for defense, nanomaterials used to make aircrafts, both the electronics but also the materials that actually make the aircraft so strong. It's in our everyday products that we use, in cars manufacturing, computers, clothing, solar panels, smart electronics. So nano is already part of our life, is a huge part of our life, although we might not necessarily think about it that way. And the thing is, I would like to put you everything in perspective, though. I don't know if many of you have actually watched the Terminator movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, good old movie. In 1991, this is what the Terminator movie thought was going to happen in 2029. So robotics with fluid movements, robots taking over society. It's all very well and good. This was a really, really good movie. I always enjoy watching it, actually. But you might be very, very surprised to see actually where we are. This was a video that I took in 2022, actually. A few years have passed, but still the same. This is the best we can do in robotics, actually, that is up in the market. And the crucial difference between these two approaches, these two things, come from the way we approach materials. And why? If we look at the Terminator type of robot, the thing is actually, there are materials, robots, devices that have functionality developed at material level. On the other hand, the technology we use is actually based on functionality developed at structural level. What it means? It means that in this case, in the case of today, the robots down there, what we do is we take materials that are already existing, silicon, for example, and we try to break it down in something smaller and give functionality in that way. The truth is instead that if you want to add new functionalities, you have to start from atoms. And combining atoms and particles in order to enable the functionality that you desire. So these are the two differences between what we call the top-down approach, shrinking down something that is large, starting from a material in what we call bulk level, and then break it down into nano, or the difference going from the bottom-up approach, starting from atoms and combining atoms, controlling atoms to assemble in terms of creating materials at nanoscale. And the materials I would like to spend a little bit of time with is a very, very special class of nanomaterials. They are called two-dimensional nanomaterials. So you might have heard in the news, you might have heard about graphene. What is graphene? Why is such a nice, wonderful material? Well, graphene actually comes from graphite, what you actually use in your pencil's lead. It's made of billions and billions and billions of layers of carbon atoms, like if you had a very, very thick book. That is graphite. What happens if you actually take one single page out of that book? That is like graphene, is one layer only out of that massive layered material. And the beauty of that is that when you take that page out and you compare the full book and the page, the properties are very, very different. So graphene, as opposed to graphite, the one that you use on your everyday school, graphene has some very, very special properties given by the fact that we shrunk it down to the thickness of one atom. And why? It becomes electrically conductive. It conduces electricity better than copper. It's the strongest material known to man. It has a lot of different properties. It's the most transparent material known to man. It's only thick one atom. The thing is, graphite is not the only layered material in nature. There are hundreds and hundreds of layered materials that can be thinned down to the thickness of an atom, exactly like graphene. And you end up with a lot of these building blocks there that can be exfoliated exactly the same way, and you can tear pages, and you end up with one atom thin materials that are exceptional in their properties. So what you see there, my back, is a photograph of a lot of different solutions of different colors. These are solutions made of 2D materials, of different type of materials. So suddenly, the beauty of that is that we not only have graphene, but we have hundreds of different other materials that we can make into solutions, inks. This is a magic word that will come back later. You will understand later why I use the word ink. But the wonderful thing is, you see, there are loads of different colors. Colors show that they have different optical properties, for example. And all these materials are different in their own way. Some of them are metallic, conduce electricity. Some of them are insulating. Some of them are semiconductors. I just named the 3 building blocks of electronics there. Some of them are brittle. Some of them are very, very strong. So the wonderful thing is that we don't have one 2D material, but we have hundreds of different 2D materials, which we can pick and choose, depending what we want to use them for, and make macro objects that are useful for certain things. So when I go to schools and I'm asked, what's your job? I play with Legos. Because for me, nanomaterials, 2D nanomaterials are like Legos. And actually, Lego is funding a project with us, so they really like the concept. So I would like to show you a few things, a few of the applications we are targeting in my lab. We use a lot of these 2D materials to develop the new generation of batteries. Everyone in the room I would talk to later, or I'm sure you all struggle with the same. When people hear, you work with batteries, my battery dies so long, I just need to keep it plugged. My phone only lasts 3 hours, and then I need a power bank, whatever. Everyone is struggling with that. So there is a huge need to actually make batteries last longer, but also store more energy, as we will learn. So our approach is to actually use 2D materials in the building blocks of the batteries, in what we call the electrodes, the cathode and the anode. I would like to actually focus a little bit the matter just for you to understand how much more critical the issue is beyond our energy crisis of finding a power bank to keep our telephones on. So this one here is the state-of-the-art electric car in the market. How many of you own at home an electric car? I'm very curious. How many do? Okay, not very few. I don't have an electric car either. And the answer is, I'm waiting that they have my batteries. So if you actually dismantle the car, you actually see that the battery is taking the full bottom of the car itself. Adds up a huge amount of weight. Sometimes, especially I'm Italian, and in Italy, sometimes we have very small bridges. In some bridges, electric cars are not allowed to go because they are too heavy. They are as heavy as a minivan. And the whole weight is actually taken by the full battery. If we go to that part and break it down, look at this, guys. It's made of a lot of batteries there. This is an 85 kilowatt-hour battery. It lasts about 600 kilometers. It would give me a lot of anxiety, to be honest. It would cost, to replace this battery, about 10,000 euro. It weighs 540 kilograms. Only that piece is actually made of about 7,100 batteries, single batteries. Okay, so this is actually the state of the art that we have. So you agree that this is great, this is very nice, but it is not yet there. The issue with batteries is that also, not only they weigh a lot and they are impractical and they cost a fortune and they are not great at storing energy, but also is the fact that they degrade very fast. You buy a battery, in your first month, in your first year even, if you can stretch it, you might get the full lifetime. But the thing is, the more you use it, the less is going to last for a single charge. And the reason is, what you see here behind my back is an image, one of our electron microscopes, of a battery electrode material, pristine, off the shelf, a battery that is just been made. You see that is very nice, it's perfect. After we use it just 100 times, you actually start seeing that it's all cracked. This is the reason why that battery will be able to hold less charge. If you actually take an image after that battery has been used just 600 times of charging, plugging, discharging, using it, you end up with massive cracks. Eventually, after a year or so of usage, it will pulverize completely. So this is one problem. Second problem is that actually they don't store a huge amount of energy. This on my back is the most efficient and largest battery on the planet. Is for grid storage, to store energy from wind, sun, and all these alternative green ways of generating electricity. This is a massive issue because if we want to rely on the sun, well, the sun doesn't shine all the time. I live and work in Ireland. Surely there we don't have any sun. We rely more on the wind in Ireland, yet wind doesn't blow all the time. So we must rely on batteries that can store energy when it's available and then allows us to use it when we need it. And this battery here is the state of the art. It's placed in Alaska. It occupies a massive area. It's occupying, I think, the equivalent of about 6 football pitches. That's how large it is. And the truth is that that is able to come up and sustain a population of 17,000 people. If there is a breakdown of the electricity, if there is a power cut, it would be able to sustain 17,000 people for how long you think? 7 minutes. That's all it can do. So you might agree with me that we have to do something to improve what we have, okay? So in my lab, we are using the nanomaterials I described. I will not get into the details of them, but we basically have already developed and commercialized, and hopefully this will be soon in the market, batteries that we really make the energy storage 5 times more energy storage in terms of energy density possible. This is a huge leap forward, and this is already in the market, almost. You can imagine that when we develop something in the lab, there are always about 10 years of gap until that technology breaks through and gets to your homes. So this is something that is on the coming. What I would like to actually do is just show you what other things are coming. You're very young. What will come next year or the year after, it's pretty interesting, but what is really cool is just to see what is going to happen in the near future of 10 years' time, for example. And these are some of the energy storage devices that we are developing in our lab. Fully transparent, fully bendable. This what you see there that is held by one of my researchers. You can see only the hand, unfortunately, is a fully assembled batteries. Both electrode, the electrolyte, and over there is overimposed on my researcher's mobile phone. 100% transparent. So this is indeed the next generation of portable energy storage, portable batteries that you will have in the future. This is another way we actually make and test our batteries. With our inks, we can literally use our materials in the form of inks, 3D print stamps, and then roll them up on surfaces. Imagine batteries manufactured this way be embedded in windows, for example, or in smart buildings, where they will be able to be embedded in the overall structure and appearance of these buildings. And these are materials that work. This is another type of applications. Here, actually, I show a couple of them, where in the movie I show you how these batteries are fully 3D printable. We can make them, in this case, in the form of gels, and this is especially indicated for a few types of applications. You see at the bottom, we print our batteries also on textiles. This is the new generation of electronic textiles. You go to the gym, you don't need to wear a smartwatch. Everything will be monitored. Your health will be monitored. Your training will be monitored. Again, we're doing this in partnership with an industry that I'm pretty sure all of you know, but I cannot name. On the other side, you actually see these nanomaterials being made in a structure that is super light. It's 99% air, but yet has the same storage capabilities. And I want to show you here a little video showing the type of handling that we have for these nanomaterials at nanoscale. This is an ink being 3D printed, because we are working on 3D printing these batteries for making customized devices. Why is this important? It's important because certain batteries require a very, very high level of customization. Think about bypasses, people who have heart attacks and need implants and of bypasses. These are powered by batteries, and these need to be replaced within the lifetime of batteries. So in this case, the batteries will be able to be built on the basis of each particular heart configuration. Not every one of us has the same shapes and size and things. So customization is the key there. And last but not least, I want to show you the very last type of application we are seeking, where we make these hydrogels made of these 2D materials, which are fully conductive. There you see there are two silly putty types of materials that are very bendable, very malleable, and they conduce electricity. And because of that, we're actually using them as sensors, as motion sensors. Actually, you can detect there the bending of the finger of my researcher, the bending of the forearm, the throat when he speaks. You actually can detect the movements, the forehead here, the frowning of the forehead. This is materials that will be able to be embedded in clothing or garments and being able to motion sense what we do. And the nice thing as well is that we can make them in different shapes. They can take any form. These are all actually 3D printed ones. So you might now agree with me that indeed the frontiers of materials is being extended. We are giving intelligence to our materials. And this is what we are achieving in the lab. But now we get into the next thing, the very next big thing that we need to address, which is what is the next big challenge beyond the lab door. And the thing is that outside our labs, outside labs, not all the science is real science. So we need to be really careful. So the thing is, guys, the challenge we all face as a society, and you as young society, it's really important. We are overloaded by information. There are a lot of information that are bombarding to us. We often cannot distinguish the type of information that come to us. It comes to my mind, actually, sometimes, a lot of the times the narratives collide. These are some examples. Here in one hand, you have coffee dark side. Coffee is linked to heart diseases. And on the other news type, you get, oh, coffee is fantastic. You will live longer. Which one is right? The right one is the one where science has spoken. And the thing is, misinformation often wins, unfortunately, because of many things. It might be fear, might be anger, because I'm upset for what is happening to my family or whatever. Hopes sometimes. I would hope that some cure for a special type of disease is developed, and at the same time, there's a lot of misinformation there. Sometimes there is bias. So we have to be extremely careful there. And the thing is, this matters to me, but it also matters to all of you guys in the room, because this can lead to having extreme consequences. Social crisis, economical turmoils, threats to the democracy, and a lot of different things that have huge consequences as society. So the thing is, I, as a scientist, always have my safety net, because I know that everything that is scientific comes from knowledge, from theories that have been studied and proved. And there is a scientific rigor in understanding these outcomes and this data. It's based on evidence. We question everything constantly. And before producing a scientific paper or before commercializing something, there's a lot of thought and investigation that has gone into that. So the battery that I showed you are about 30 years of lab work. And the thing is, guys, the most important question that I want to give you, and the focus is, please question everything. And go from hypothesis and trying to understand what is the real matter there. Test rigorously, read, inform yourself, and then, importantly, analyze the data. Make sure that data come from reliable sources, and verify everything, because we are in an age where we need to question ourselves a little bit more, okay? So critical thinking will be your superpower. It's our superpower in the lab, but it's your superpower because you are the new generation. And you have to develop a sort of what I always call it, a sort of daily misinformation toolkit for you to check the sources, look for evidence, cross-reference. Although it's a little bit of more work, but it will inform you better on things. And believe in STEM, believe in science, because what we do is corroborated, and it's always towards pioneering new things, like some of the things I showed you. So from now on, don't be part of the problem, be the solution. You are in this room the solution, because you are the new generation. And as I said at the start, I want to start and finish exactly in the same way. You are our future, you are our hope. We are here just to teach you, and the best will come from you guys, not from what we are doing. So thank you very, very much for your attention and for the invitation.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Just one question from me. How long do you think it will take you to make with the batteries the Iron Man-like suit?
A lot of technology goes in there, not just the batteries. But we are getting there.
Yeah, you're getting there, right?
We are getting there. Always what I say is, everything that we make in the lab is small scale. Then you have to go to a larger scale, and then you have to do all sorts of industrial testing. So I always take the rule of thumb for what we do is about 10, 15 years to get to the market. For example, we developed, I was talking about Legos, where I like walking with Lego, because we are making conductive Lego blocks that they can program and bring to life. And we already licensed this technology to them. And now they're doing all the tests that I never thought about. Saliva tests, because kids put these things in their mouths. And so there is a lot more after what we do in the lab.
Wow, it's amazing, thank you.
Also, one question. So you said back in the days computers were this big. Now computers are this big or this small. And is there a reason to make it even smaller? Because we have large hands, and now our eyes aren't so perfect. Is our biology a limiting factor to technology, or is it something you can work with and develop new kind of technologies?
Technologies is constant development, and that's exactly where it's important actually to connect STEM sciences with social sciences, for example, because they look at behaviors or needs, and actually that's how we can customize things. We are certainly going to go, regardless of which size of shape the macro thing is going to get, we are certainly going to drive more and more the miniaturization inside, because things become more powerful, more controllable, easier to handle. You might not have a mobile phone that is this size, but you could, in a few years, roll it up and put it in your pocket. So it would be large, but small at the same time. So there is a lot of development, so you should watch that space.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Professor Nicolosi.
Thank you very much.
Tí, ktorí ste včera sledovali ESET Science Award, tak si možno všimli, že ocenenie vedecká osobnosť do 35 rokov vyhrala filozofka Daniela Vacek. Tak ja by som tento ďalší blok rád začal citátom jedného poľsko-amerického filozofa Alfreda Koržibského, ktorý povedal, že slovo nie je objektom a mapa nie je teritorium. Čiže naše predstavy o svete sú niečím iným, ako je svet samotný.
Wow, to si ma aj zaskočil. Ja by som zase chcel povedať, že pokiaľ je veda kompasom, tak potrebujeme aj mapu, aby sme sa v tom svete dezinformácií nestratili. To tu už bolo tak nejak trošku natienené. A práve o tomto príde rozprávať náš ďalší speaker, David Púchovský, ktorý vám ukáže, ako sa dá spojiť výskum, ako sa dá spojiť technológia a vzdelávanie v boji proti manipulácii. David Púchovský.
Ahojte, dobrý deň. Tak budem hovoriť dnes o hoaxoch, dezinformáciách, algoritmoch, sociálnych sieťach. Zhruba tak to trvá 1:15. Ale to je tá rozšírená prednáška, ktorú môžete mať aj vo svojej škole, a budem hovoriť o tom, že ako si môžete objednať, samozrejme bezplatne. Dnes to musím stihnúť do takých 15 minút. Už som si pozeral čas a vidím, že ste tu hodinu aj pol, tak ja keď som bol vo vašom veku, tak tá pozornosť sa stratila tak po 20 minútach. Môžete si to overiť, tí, ktorí sú tu z Púchovej zo školy, u Kolárika. A tak, aby sme sa rozcvičili na úvod, lebo nepochybujem, že ste lepší odo mňa a že ešte tú pozornosť udržujete, tak dáme si takú rozcvičku. Kto chce byť úspešný v živote, ruku hore. Kto chce zarábať peniaze najlepšie čoskoro, aby si mohol kúpiť byt a auto? A niečo pre spoločnosť dobré? Rovno aj, kto chce spraviť? A kto chce byť otrokom sociálnych sietí? No je vás málo, bohužiaľ, dobrovoľníkov, vidíte, je strašne smutný Mark z toho, on by chcel, aby ste všetci boli otrokmi sociálnych sietí, aby on mohol mať 10. jachtu, 20. dom a super kryt protiatomový na Havaji a podobne. Keď som bol vo vašom veku, chodil som do školy, tak po týždni som niekedy našiel takú 10. od mami, hej, už tam bola zo pár dní. Kebyže máte takéto niečo tu so sebou, tak kľudne to môžete teraz hodiť na túto obrazovku. A ja vám vysvetlím, prečo to takto otvorene tvrdím. Lebo mám nejakú osobnú skúsenosť s ľuďmi, ktorí pracujú pre Facebook a mohol som navnímať ich svet a filozofiu toho, ako funguje Facebook a nie len Facebook, ale aj iné sociálne siete. Keď som robil pre štát na polícii, tak som sa stretával s ľuďmi, ktorí robia pre neho. Tí ľudia sú v Európe, majú na starosti európsky trh a títo ľudia mne, ale aj ostatným úradníkom alebo dokonca aj ministrom zhruba 7 rokov tlačili kaleráby do hlavy a sľubovali, že Facebook, aká je to super firma, že im záleží na tom, aby to bolo bezpečné, dobré prostredie, aby tam neboli nejaké zlé profily, hejty, extrémistický obsah, radikalizácia a podobne. A toto bolo neustále 7 rokov stretnutí, hovorili, že ako robia proti tomuto obsahu niečo, no ale už potom sme počase zistili, že to je všetko len image, PR, marketing a oni jednoducho s tým nič nerobia. Táto fotka je z roku 2019. Mark Zuckerberg bol v americkom kongrese, v podstate na takom výsluchu, lebo aj americkí kongresmeni, senátori sa zaujímali o to, že Facebook, čo to je za firmu, spoločnosť, že tam nie sú žiadne pravidlá, že ako halo, robte s tým niečo. Tak on v tom roku 2019 tam pôsobil pomaly ako nejaký android, neživý človek. On sa tak samozrejme nahodil, aby ste ho všetci lutovali, že chudáčik miliardár, áno, on chce pomôcť všetkým, on myslí na teba, na teba, na teba. A dušoval sa tam presne ako tí, jeho európski zamestnanci tu na tých stretnutiach s nami Slovákmi, že áno, ideme robiť. No, lenže čo sa stalo? V Amerike boli voľby, zmenila sa tam celospoločenská situácia a on krátko po voľbách nahral video, v ktorom poprel všetky svoje slova a všetky slova jeho zamestnancov, ktoré hovorili, že treba bojovať proti dezinformáciám a tak ďalej. A úplne to zotrel, hodil v podstate pod autobus aj ľudí, ktorí sa venovali dezinformáciám, ktorých si Facebook najal v Amerike, aby overovali fakty. A teraz už je proste žiadne pravidlá, absolútna sloboda slova, nech tam sa šíri aj to, že vypí bielidlo, to je jedno, že zomrieš, ale proste to je ten imidž, ktorý je teraz nastavený v Amerike. A on, ako taký poslušný psík, hneď úplne otočil a vlastne z veľkej osobnosti, ktorú sme tu mali uctievať, z veľkého nejakého vynálezcu, je takýto malý človečík, ktorý sa otočí tak, ako bude kázať nejaký systém, a ktorý vás všetkých zapredá a ktorý bude najšťastnejší, ak tam budete vy scrollovať do nemoty, pretože scrollovanie do nemoty, komentovanie, zdieľanie rovná sa prachy pre firmu Meta a pre neho hlavne. Čiže ja som aj rád, že to sa stalo v Amerike, lebo to ukázalo, že ak sme mali my nejaké fantázie o tom, že takíto ľudia, čo prevádzkujú sociálne siete, že majú dobrý zámer, tak teraz sa ukázalo, že všetko je o peniazoch. A k tomu tak aj pristupujte aj vy a nemajte falošné predstavy, ako sme možno mali aj my, úradníci v minulých rokoch, že oni chcú niečo robiť, no nechcú, oni chcú len zarábať a keď to bude znamenať, že zo pár ľudí, používateľov sociálnych sietí zomrie kvôli tomu, tak im to je úplne ukradnuté. teória zvracajúceho chlapca, to som vymyslel prednedávnom, a je to experiment, ktorý si môžete vyskúšať doma. Stačí vám len telefón, Instagram najlepšie, alebo aj TikTok. Instagram asi je lepšie, lebo som to robil na Instagrame. Otvorte si feed a scrollujte Reelska. No a ja som prednedávnom takto scrolloval Reelska a pozerám tam takú hovadinu, že proste v lietadle partia chalanov a jeden sedel v uličke a začal zvracať a nie, aby si zobral to vrecko, hej, do uličky rovno. A nie tí jeho kamaráti, aby mu pomohli niečo, oni si ho točili všetci a smiali sa. A pozerám na to, a že už prestane, nie, a ono proste ešte ja som proste totálne brutál, trápna situácia, ktorá sa môže stať komukoľvek. Ale čo sa stalo na tom Instagrame? Pozeral som to asi tých 30 sekúnd, jak to trvalo, poslal som súkromnú správu kamarátovi, ktorý sa bojí lietať, hej, nech si z neho spravím srandu, že takto by si vyzeral ty, kebyže ideš so mnou v lietadle, a idem ďalej scrollovať. Reelska. O 3 Reelska ďalej, tam mám zás nejakú osobu, ktorá zvracia. Idem ďalej. A zás o 3 Reelska, zás tam niekto zvracia, hej. Proste ten Instagram, respektíve algoritmus, už pri tom prvom lietadlovom videu pochopil, že aha, ona to čumí 30 sekúnd, ešte to odoslal kamarátovi, hej, súkromnú správu, do ktorej by nemal mať nikto prístup. A ten systém to zanalyzoval a v priebehu pár sekúnd mi začal núkať podobné videá, kde je proste to, čo sa tam udialo, hej, ale tie podobné videá boli proste v inom prostredí, ale išlo o to, že proste človek tam zvracia. Hej, totálna hovadina, si poviete, to je jasné. Lenže si predstavte, že vy budete scrollovať na Instagrame, takto nejako budete interaktovať s nejakým obsahom, ktorý bude možno zlý, radikálny, extrémistický. A vám to nedopne na prvú. To sa môže stať dospelým ľuďom, to je úplne bežné. To nie je o tom, že ste mladí, to vôbec nie. A vy to budete lajkovať, pošlete to nejakému kamarátovi a odrazu ten Instagram to vycíti. Aha, to sa ti páči, tak ja ti idem núkať podobný obsah. Ten algoritmus si nepovie, že preboha, čo to ty lajkuješ, nejaký nebezpečný obsah, nejdem ti to už núkať, nie, ruky preč. Nie, naopak. On ti to začne núkať s cieľom toho, lebo však aha, tebe sa ľúbi to prvé, tak dávam ti obdobné videá, aby si sedel za tým Instagramom do nemoty. A odrazu celý váš feed bude plný radikalizácie, extrémizmu a to je v podstate počiatok procesu, na ktorého konci môže byť človek, z ktorého sa stane terorista a reálne vykoná nejaký teroristický útok. Čiže to bude trvať mesiace, možno niekedy týždne a pokiaľ vy sa nespamätáte v tom čase, že naozaj aha, mne tu ten algoritmus núka blbosti nebezpečné, tak stratíte kontrolu nad sebou samým a stane sa z vás úplne iný človek a to len kvôli tomu, že váš feed zaplavili takéto závadové veci, pretože cieľom algoritmu, cieľom Zuckerberga a podobných je udržať vás za každú cenu za obrazovkou telefónu. Tohto poznáte? Kebyže nie som na takomto prestížnom podujatí, ale s kamarátmi, tak by som povedal, že by som mu neveril ani odpoveď na otázku, koľko je hodín, tak na mňa pôsobí. Hej, tejtovci, to sú šialení úplne blázni. A tu chcem povedať jednu vec. Keď je niekto influencer a má aj milióny followerov, neznamená, že je to normálny človek. Máme kopu dobrých influencerov, Vedátor, Expl0ited a tak ďalej, ale je veľmi veľa zlých. A oni pochopili, že keď budú trepať nezmysly 2 na 3, budú mať milióny followerov, lebo tí ľudia to budú žrať, nekriticky to budú k tomu pristupovať. A čo znamená milióny followerov? Zasa vraciame k tomu, prachy, vy otroci, živte ich, aby mali ešte viac víl, drogy a to je všetko v jednom. Potom budú predávať merch a vy to budete kupovať. Ten merch sa rozpadne po týždni, ale máte merch od tejtovcov a podobných ľudí. Hej? To je super, že sa takto dá živiť. Len samozrejme v tej výbave takýchto ľudí nemôže byť nejaký charakter alebo morálka, etické pravidlá a tak ďalej. Pri tejtovcoch je dôležité to povedať, že ja by som strašne chcel byť pri tých chalanoch, ktorí veria teóriám týchto dvoch polobláznov. A keď títo chalani budú riešiť svoju prvú hypotéku v živote, čo ich čaká o pár rokov a v tej si uvedomia do pekla, aha, toto je ten reálny život. Toto je to, ako mi títo dávali do hlav niekoľko rokov. Bacha fakt na tých zlých influencerov, je to ako s celým Facebookom, Instagramom a tak ďalej. Oni sa na tom priživujú a tiež chcú zarábať a sú ochotní čokoľvek šíriť, lebo vidia, že časť spoločnosti im to žere. Výzvy na TikToku hlavne. Kedysi sa chalani hecovali, ale aj dievčatá kľudne, raz do týždňa, keď sa stretli v nejakej partii, keď ešte nebol TikTok, Facebook. Teraz stačí, že to otvoríte a chrlia na vás výzvy neustále, aby ste niečo opakovali. A vy si poviete možno, že aha, však on to prežil, tak to idem spraviť ja. Ale neviete, či to video není zostrihané a keď náhodou to je autentické, tak možno on to prežil, ale nie je zaručené, že vy to prežijete. Teraz je v móde, že jazdiť po vlakoch. Normálne mladí ľudia idú na vlak, ktorý ide vo Viedni minulý rok, tak to zomreli 2 Česi. Postavia sa na vlak, smejú sa, TikTok, aj teraz pred pár dňami v inej krajine to bolo. Točia sa a potom už nemajú hlavu. To sa fakt deje, reálne. Čiže vy, ako náhle uveríte, že aha, toto je super výzva, mne sa nič nestane, vtedy sa vám to stane. Takže na toto ste v podstate sami, na celú túto problematiku, čo tu dnes hovorím. Pretože nikto vám nemôže zakázať telefón, nikto vám ho nezoberie, ani neočakávam, že po tejto prednáške prestanete scrollovať Reelska, ale dávajte si proste bacha, lebo ste na tom úplne sami, nikto vám nedokáže pomôcť, len vy sami sebe. Čiže z tohto všetkého, čo som hovoril, pravidlo číslo 1, vážte si samých seba, je to proste o tom nebyť otrokom. Hej, to je z nejakej básničky, tuším, alebo neviem. Strach, druhá téma. Druhá oblasť, strach, to je už z pohľadu ľudí, ktorí tvoria hoaxy a chcú vás manipulovať. Hej, to môžu byť aj tí zlí influenceri. Oni si povedia, že vy sa musíte báť, lebo keď sa budete báť, ste ľahko manipulovateľní a budete ľahko plniť to, čo chce od vás ten, kto vytvoril klamstvo. Tomu človeku, čo tvorí klamstvo, ide najčastejšie o moc, alebo chce zarobiť peniaze, ako sme si povedali, alebo chce len lajky, lebo v živote je smutný a chce na internete mať 1 000 000 lajkov. Tak bude klamať a bude zároveň vo vás vyvolávať strach a nenávisť. Napríklad vezmeme si Ukrajincov, tých je na Slovensku kvôli ruskej vojne zhruba 80 000. Už to číslo 80 000 dáva logiku, že medzi takou veľkou skupinou ľudí je nejaký zlý Ukrajinec. Možno aj vrah, zlodej. Proste veľká skupina ľudí. A ľudia, ktorí šíria falošné správy a chcú rozsievať strach, tak oni čakajú na to, keď nejaký Ukrajinec zlý spraví niečo zlé a potom vám budú hovoriť, nenávidte ich, neznášajte ich. A vy budete počúvať takýchto ľudí, budete klikať, komentovať, zdieľať a takíto ľudia budú vďaka vám populárni. Keď sa stretnete s takýmto niečo, tak povedzte tomu človeku, čo vám to sa snaží nahovoriť a nám niekto hovorí, že sme národ vrahov. Však si vygooglite kriminálne prípady Slovenska, na Wikipédii je zoznam doživotne odsúdených slovenských vrahov. Jeden smutne známy, nebudem ho tu menovať zbytočne, on zavraždil po Európe 7 ľudí. A stáva sa vám, že keď idete mimo Slovenska, že vám niekto nadáva? Že ste príslušníčka národu vrahov kvôli tomuto človeku? No nie. Takže aj vy to aplikujete na to, keď budete čeliť takýmto správam, aby vo vás vyvolávali nenávisť, strach kvôli zlyhaniu jednotlivca, ktorý nie je Slovák, je napríklad Ukrajinec, Róm alebo člen akejkoľvek skupiny. Vždy treba vedieť odsúdiť toho jedného, ale nie celú skupinu. Z toho vyplýva, nešírte nenávisť. Ideme na príklady nejakých hoaxov ďalších, ale konkrétnych, mám tu nejaké screenshoty, 3. Otázka na vás. Je rok 1950, ste v československej vláde, úroda v Československu je zlá. Na koho to zvalíte? Na koho? Američanov, výborne, presne tak. Američania v roku 1950 z lietadiel zhadzovali chrobáky, ktoré požierali tú najlepšiu československú pôdu na svete. V tom čase bolo iba rádio, noviny a všetky tie československé noviny za 10 dní vydali viac ako 700 článkov. Autor rozprávky Ferdo Mravec nakreslil komiks, ako to je pravda. Vaši rovesníci sa predbiehali v tom, kto zozbiera najviac chrobákov na poli, nosili to na úrady a štát zriadil štátnu komisiu pre preskúmanie útoku imperialistického chrobáka. To sa reálne stalo a tí chudáci naši predkovia Čechoslováci nemali Facebook, ani telku nemali ešte vtedy. Tak buď verili, alebo si to nevšímali. Dnes, kebyže toto niekto povie, stavím sa, že 10% Slovákov tomu uverí, napriek tomu, že aké technológie máme. Komu palička na testovanie covidu poškodila mozog? Vždy sa prihlásia nejakí chalani, smejú sa v triedách, ale to hovorím, že to nie je to poškodenie, ale to sa volá puberta. Poškodila palička mozog, zaviedla covid, zaviedla čip. Šírilo sa to ako fakt a vieme, aká je pravda po rokoch. Kto je očipovaný? 1.1.21 sa malo začať čipovať. Dôchodcov mali brať dôchodky, ak sa odbejdú dať čipovať. Mamička, keď porodila v porodici dieťa a nechcela byť čipovaná, tak by ho zobrali. Úplne to kričí z vás tá predpoveď. Zdieľaná tisícekrát počas covidu. Vtedy fakt, hej, názory lekárov úplne trápne, teraz sa na tom zasmiete, ale vtedy to naozaj tak bolo. Kto ešte nebol čipovaný, tak ESET to teraz vybaví pri odchode, každý dostane čip. Takže overujte dookola, ďalšia rada. Non-stop overujte, vy musíte byť trochu paranoidní, lebo jak vás to zaplavuje, tie videá, statusy, tak jednoducho není iná zbraň, ako byť stále na vážkach, na otázkach. To platí aj pre tieto falošné správy, pre tie nenávistné správy, ale aj pre podvody, keď reálne vám z kreditky chcú strhnúť, že akože len 2 eurá, ale prídete o všetko. Neustále buďte v strehu. Taká je doba. Tá prednáška hodina 15 je na YouTube Hoaxy a podvody, tak si ju môžete dneska večer pustiť. Na piatok večer úplne super. Ak ju chcete naživo, tak tuto môžu sa učitelia obrátiť, ale máme hore aj stánok, kde si môžu objednať bezplatnú prednášku. Tam si môžete zobrať aj takúto brožúrku, kde je tá prednáška na pár stranách naozaj zosumarizovaná. Je tam aj cvičenie, ktoré môžete robiť v triedách, aby ste pochopili ešte viac, ako sa šíria tie dezinformácie. A tuším tam ešte 2 rady na záver. Lovte hoaxy, ale nenávistný obsah. A čo to znamená? Tak to znamená to, že to budete napríklad nahlasovať tým sociálnym sieťam a dúfať, že s tým niečo spravia. Budete to posielať napríklad môjmu projektu alebo podobnému projektu. Prípadne budete takéto statusy ukazovať učiteľom v škole, aby ste diskutovali o nich. Ale robte niečo a jednoducho zvrtnite to, že vy nebudete len takto teraz len scrollovať bezprizorne, ale budete scrollovať s tým, že niečo vám to dá do života. Teraz vám to môže dať nejaké vzdelanie, nápady, idei a do budúcna kľudne sa to môže stať vašim živobytím. Ale možno hlavný odkaz je fakt to, že skroťte sociálne siete, aby oni slúžili vám. A na záver rada, imidž je na nič, nos rúško, prežij chemtrails. Ďakujem.
Komu sa páčila prednáška?
Nech sa páči.
No, väčší bordel, poďte na to. Komu sa páčila prednáška?
Ďakujem pekne, ďakujem.
To si to podľa mňa zaslúži, akože výbornou formou podané veľmi dôležité veci. Ďakujeme za to.
Ja mám možno ale jednu rýchlu otázku, že ty si rozprával o tom, ako máme pozorovať chyby myslenia ostatných, ktoré sa nám snažia tlačiť do hlavy. Čo sa stane, keď už niečo také máme v hlave? Že ako mám spochybniť veci, ktoré ja mám v hlave, tak aby som si tam zase nenarobil totálny neporiadok? Aký máš tip?
tak treba si vytvoriť takého imaginárneho kamaráta, ktorý sa budeš rozprávať a nebudeš nikdy sám. Tak nie, ale jednoducho paranoja, jednoducho stále, že je to pravda, je to fakt, tieto otázky si opakovať, lebo tí ľudia, ktorí to vypúšťajú von, vedia, že sme tak zahltení, že nie je to o tom, že keď boli len noviny, že občas si prečítal noviny, teraz je to non-stop, čiže neustále si pýtať, klásť otázky vo svojej hlave.
Čiže priznaj si tu možno, že som sa v niečom splietol, lebo sme bombardovaní a atakovaní supermiliardármi so super pokročilými technológiami a sem tam sa nám niečo do tej hlavy dostane, čo tam nepatrí. Ďakujeme. David Púchovský.
Ďakujem pekne.
Ja viem, že sme tu riešili také malé baterky, ktoré sa dajú nosiť na oblečení, ale aj tak bola toto moja obľúbená prednáška.
Určite nemá. Mám pre teba otázku. Prosím ťa, aké máš heslo k YouTubeovému účtu?
Komplikované a dvojfázovo overené.
Dobre, takže minimálne takto si technologicky zabezpečený, aby na teba neboli žiadne útoky.
Presne tak.
Sú to pomerne vážne veci a nedieje sa to iba jednotlivcom, môže sa to diať celým inštitúciám. Viem, že vám by sa možno páčila predstava, že vám niekto nahekuje školu a nemusíte ísť potom na vyučovanie. A v skutočnosti to môžu byť veľmi vážne problémy, lebo môžeme mať napríklad elektrické siete, máme nemocnicu. Tak, niekto nám môže napadnúť nemocnicu a vypnúť všetky zariadenia, ktoré tam bežia, niekto nám môže vypnúť kataster a zrazu nevieme, kde bývame.
Áno.
Blúdime len tak po uliciach. Takže sú to vlastne veľmi vážne veci, tak kto sa tomu bude venovať, aby nám pomohol sa zorientovať aj v tejto problematike?
Tak Robert Lipovský je človek, ktorý tieto hrozby nielen rieši, ale je vedúcim výskumného tímu v ESETe, ktorý odhalil niektoré z najnebezpečnejších kyberútokov posledných rokov od NotPetya až po Grey Energy.
Tak, privítam ho na stage, ale on vám na začiatok ukáže jedno video a hneď potom vybehne.
In times when computers were still young, the users roamed free, navigating through the vast unknown without any threats. But soon, an unknown danger appeared on the horizon. An evil that the elders began to call the virus. It was in the year 87 of the second millennium when a hero was born. A true fighter ready to defend every user out there. Yeah, it was us. The ESET company, which is safeguarding the computer and online space ever since, ever evolving and adjusting to counter any new threat. Because what started with the first virus called the brain never stopped, and neither did we. Be sure we are vigilant and always ready. My name is Robert Lipovský, and I'm a principal threat intelligence researcher. ESET researchers helped combat some of the most sophisticated cyber threats ever encountered. We discovered the industry attacks that tried to cut the power for millions of people. Later, when the WannaCry epidemic was wreaking havoc around the world, ESET users were only reading about it from the news. They weren't affected since our software was proactively blocking the way it was spreading. ESET was the first to add a UEFI scanner to its product in 2017. Thanks to this feature, we discovered the first UEFI rootkit in the wild called LoJax. We also discovered Crook, a vulnerability in Wi-Fi chips that affected over 1 billion mobile and IoT devices. We reported it so that chip manufacturers and vendors could fix it and prevent breaches of user privacy. We've been here from the beginning, protecting businesses and communities, always prepared, always resilient.
Hi, my name is Jura Janošik. I'm the Director of Artificial Intelligence at ESET. My team is the backbone of our mission control, sitting in an office we call Houston. We run cutting-edge AI systems that track malicious activities in cyberspace 24/7, processing every signal, data point, and anomaly. If there's an emerging threat, trust me, we already seen something like it before. But we don't sit around and wait for the malware to strike. We build proactive defenses and set up traps for the threat actors before they even know we are there. Every day, we intercept over 500,000 unique cyber threats before they can cause harm to customer systems. Oh, it looks like we got another one.
All of this is possible only due to constant innovation and development. My name is Richard Marko, and I am the CEO of ESET. From the early years, we formed the company on strong principles and core values of courage, integrity, reliability, and passion. Our experts embody those values and help us fulfill our vision. to create a world where technology is safe, fostering progress for all. Technology has changed the world. Protecting that technology and you has always been our world. Prevention first for a secure future.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be the final presentation of our program today. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes following up on that video and going into a little bit more detail on some of the most notable discoveries that we've had in our virus lab, as we like to call that Houston room that you've seen in the video. I won't do an academic overview, so I won't bore you with definitions of what is a virus, what is a rootkit, what is a backdoor, what is a Trojan horse, and so on. You can look all of that online. Instead, I've chosen a couple of interesting examples, and I'll split the presentation into two distinct groups, categories, let's call them, of threats, which are used by different types of attackers, different hacker groups, for different motivations, for different purposes. So the first category is what we call APTs, or Advanced Persistent Threats, and they have various roles. So one of the roles and one of the different types of attacks that we have seen, and this actually follows up nicely on some of the previous presentations, because as you see, I'll be talking about attacks at the energy sector, so we really didn't synchronize our presentations, but I really like that it catches up really nicely. So we've seen a lot of these attacks in Ukraine, and it has to do a lot with the war that Russia is waging in Ukraine, and we've been following that very closely because this war has not only a physical, kinetic component, but also a digital component as well. So a lot of these cyber attacks were conducted by this most notorious hacker group, which we are calling Sandworm. So another Dune reference, which we had today. If I had an hour-long presentation time that I could walk you through the history, but actually the reason why we actually gave this APT group the name Sandworm was because way back when we started investigating them and analyzing was back in 2014. They were using some Dune references back in their code. That's why we gave them this Sandworm moniker. So they've been behind many of some of these attacks. I'll just select some of the most notable ones. And one of them happened in December 2015. So this was conducted by a piece of malware, so malicious code, which we're calling Black Energy. It affected several electricity distribution companies. So these were not power plants. These were not the plants that generate electricity, but these were the plants that distribute electricities to household. As you can imagine, Ukraine is quite a large country. So here in Slovakia, we have like 3 main distribution companies in the west, in the mid-central Slovakia, and in the east. Ukraine has a bit more of them, and several of those electricity distribution companies were targeted by this cyber attack. And this was actually the first ever cyber attack that actually created a blackout. So millions of people were left without electricity for a couple of hours. Depending on the particular target, the blackouts had various durations. So some of them lasted up to 6 hours. And here is another video I'll show you so that you can actually imagine how this was taking place. So the Black Energy malware, not to get too technical, so this was a piece of remote access Trojan that allowed the attackers to get access to those machines, actually in charge of controlling the flow of electricity. And at that electrical substation, so there were engineers monitoring this environment, and they recorded this video. So we actually got our hands on this video that they recorded back then. So this is what we call in their industrial control systems the SCADA software that's used to monitor all those power lines. And the point why I'm showing you this video will actually come in just a minute. So someone on that computer is clicking through all these buttons, all these switches, trying to fiddle with them, and they back up and show that, look, nobody is touching the mouse or the keyboard because these are the hackers remotely connecting to that machine and trying to use the fancy word, de-energize that substation, realistically to create that blackout that actually happened. So those were attacks against what we call critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure, of course, is the power grid, but also various other critical industries have been the targets over the years. But these sophisticated hackers also go after regular businesses and to do various goals, espionage, disruption, and so on. And this other notable attack was orchestrated using malware that we called NotPetya. So this happened in 2017, and this was really huge. So this, again, initially it was targeted against Ukrainian businesses and was really widespread. So as you can see in this screenshot, so the point of sales terminals at supermarkets were affected by this. Gas stations were affected by this. This was the reason why, I'm guessing for you young folks, you don't have to do your taxes, but for a lot of companies, this was the tax season they have to postpone because this affected the majority of companies, the majority of businesses in Ukraine, and they couldn't fill the deadlines for filing their taxes. People couldn't buy gas at gas stations, so this was one of the most devastating attacks because it was actually spreading. So it had that wormable component, so it was spreading like a computer worm and infecting other machines, not only those machines that it initially affected, but it was actually spreading to other machines as well. So here are some statistics from that. And it was directed at Ukrainian organizations initially, but because of that spreading component, it actually spread beyond the borders and spread throughout the whole world. And it affected some of the largest companies out there. Just to give one out of all the different examples is the Maersk container shipping company out of Denmark, which is one of the largest container shipping companies. So you would have those huge container ships with a lot of those containers being stuck in ports. You'd have long lines of trucks waiting for those containers, and they didn't know where to take those containers because all of their systems were taken offline because of this NotPetya computer worm. And as you can imagine, with such a huge organization, huge business, each minute of downtime was costing this company millions of dollars in damage. And if you add up all of these damages caused to all of these different huge enterprises, the estimate of the amount of damages that the NotPetya worm caused is estimated at around $10 billion, which makes it one of the, if not the most costly cyber attack that we ever encountered. So all of these examples we attributed to that sandworm advanced persistent threat group, which in turn has been attributed by the intelligence community to a Russian military intelligence agency called the GRU. So this is one of the threat actors that we are tracking, but it's not, of course, all originating from there. We're tracking a lot of different adversaries from various different regions all over the world. And now I'll give you a different example, which has been attributed to China-aligned threat actors. So Salt Typhoon is another. As you can notice, we in the industry like to give these threat groups these interesting monikers that kind of distinguish this activity from some of the other hacker groups. So Salt Typhoon has been a lot in the news. This is a much fresher example. So the two that I just gave you out of aligned with Russia are a bit older, but this one is actually really fresh. So in the past year, this has been the #1 cybersecurity headline in the United States because this group stands behind large attacks against the biggest telco companies in the United States, but also outside in other countries as well. So these are some of the headlines that have been going on around the news. And as I said, they have been targeting the largest telco companies. So at ESET, we track a related group to Salt Typhoon, which we call, yet another fancy term, Famous Sparrow. And we've been tracking their attacks against various different targets, and one of them has been against financial institution in the US. And this is just to give you a quick illustration how we analyze that attack and how that attack actually took place. So the adversary found a weakness in a web server belonging to this organization, and through a vulnerability in that web server, they were managed to get inside the network and then connect and distribute their malware to other machines, to other servers in their computer network. And then part of those computers were actually protected by ESET solutions. Other machines, unfortunately not all of them were. So we were actually searching for those machines that we did not have our solutions installed on, but that were infected. Then remediating those, getting our software installed on those, cleaning it, finding other machines. Essentially, we were playing a game of whack-a-mole with the adversary. So throughout that investigation, we were able to build a map, how it all started, from that initial access through that vulnerable web server, all the way to getting their main payload, that main backdoor running. And we found out through analyzing the logs that it took the adversary around 4 hours to do that whole spreading across their network. So all of these examples that I've gave you is what we call advanced persistent threats, or in other words, targeted attacks against high-value targets typically, which are being typically carried out by nation states, and they serve two main purposes. So I gave examples of cyber sabotage, so those were the attacks against the energy sector and also that NotPetya attack, but also a big component of that is espionage. So back in the days, if you like James Bond movies, espionage was more old school, but nowadays it's all digital, it's all happening online, and that is what some of these APT groups are motivated by and what they are actually trying to do. But of course, it's not all about this. In fact, if we talk in terms of volume, the majority of attacks actually have a financial motive. So these are regular criminals trying to make money. And to give probably the most notable example, which has been the most notable category of threats, which is ransomware, which I think every one of you probably heard about. So this is a type of malware and cyber crime where it tries to infect your computer, restrict your access to it, encrypt your files, and then demand a ransom for that. And we do research around this, and we also like to analyze how these threats evolve over time, and we really have seen a notable evolution of this. So it started way back before the 2010s, actually, but in the 2010s, it looked kind of like this. So you got a malicious email, it encrypted your data, then you got a ransom. The actual ransom notes differed. There were various different motives. Some of the attackers were quite creative, probably not the best graphic skills being employed here. We've also seen some localized versions. So this is one of the older examples that we've seen being distributed in Slovakia. But slowly, gradually, they were actually improving their techniques. So even this example, it tried to get access to your web camera. So in that, it would show you your photo, it would show you your IP address, and this was all to have that scare factor to convince you, okay, we are going after it and you have to pay this ransom, otherwise using this social engineering scare tactic. So over the years, and actually in the past couple of years, the ransomware scene really has professionalized and really evolved from what we've seen back then. Back then, the ransoms typically were in the numbers of a couple $100 or dollars, whatever. Back then, typically being paid by various payment cards to get the attacker's anonymity. Nowadays, they're requesting the ransoms in various cryptocurrencies. They're really matured in their attacks. And another theme that we've noticed is that they're using multiple levels of extortion. Because if you think about it, okay, so the threat is a ransomware type of malware, but you're tech savvy, you know that you have to protect yourself from this, and you have regular backups, right? So if you have proper backups and you are unfortunate to get hit by a ransomware infection, well, then why would you even think about paying a ransom if you can just, okay, wipe it or disinfect your computer and then restore all of your files which have been encrypted by the ransomware? Well, you just restore them from the backups. Well, the attackers are smart, they notice, which is why they stepped up their game, and they are using multiple levels of extortion. So first, before encrypting your files, they would actually steal your files and then threaten the company. So this is typically targeted by companies, against large enterprises, and then threaten them to leak a lot of sensitive information which can have reputational damage. It can have damage legislation because, of course, GDPR and all that legislation. So it's a big problem for the companies. And we've even seen multiple layers of extortion. So we've seen triple extortion, triple doxing, for example. So some of them would even add a level of distributed attacks trying to render their websites inaccessible. Also, a trend that we've observed in this ecosystem is a really professionalized ecosystem. So these ransomware gangs are operating as a service. So they are have various levels of specialization. So one gang is developing the malware, another gang is responsible for the initial access, another gang is responsible for the negotiations. So it's a really mature ecosystem. Here are a couple of examples of some of what we call the leak sites. So as I said, for the companies that refuse to pay the ransoms, they would leak all their data online, and then this shaming kind of technique. There's a lot of those. One of the most notorious ransomware gangs of the recent years is known as Lockbit. And to finish off on a positive note, so there was actually a law enforcement action taken against Lockbit, which was called Operation Chrono. So this is a really good example of the cooperation between the private sector and the public sector. Law enforcement agencies across various countries were involved. And at ESET, we track the activity of a lot of these hacker groups, whether it's APTs or ransomware, and then we feed that information to to take down activities such as Chronos, as I mentioned, or some of the other ones. And we do a lot of cooperation with law enforcement agencies all around the world, or more broadly at a region level, like Europol, or Interpol, or in the US, the FBI, and so on. So it really doesn't pay off to do cybercrime, because the hackers do get caught, and we actually did manage to help prosecute and to help actually with some of the indictments, and some of these criminals ended up in jail because of this. So why am I here? Why am I talking to you all about this? Well, of course, at ESET, we are in the business of protecting users against cyber threats. But research, as is the topic of this whole event, is at the very core of what we do. So we have a threat research lab. We are researchers who really try to understand how all of these threats work, because that is the foundation that allows us to build effective solutions for this. I hope this has been interesting for you. If it sparked your interest, then we actually have collaboration with the universities here in Slovakia, and we have our own university course where we teach the skills necessary to analyze malware and to help do the takedowns, to help disrupt the criminal botnets that I showed you. So if this is something that might be of interest to you, then we will be more than happy to teach you. Thank you.
Robert Lipovský, priatelia, naša posledná prednáška. Máš otázku?
Yeah, one quick question. Have you ever been hacked?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
we
maybe.
We actually have a really good security team, so we've definitely been targeted, and we've seen a lot of hackers trying to target us. But of course, we take the security really seriously and have robust defenses too.
If one of the students will hack you, will you employ them?
That is for a longer discussion. It's a really tricky topic. So yeah, we can take that offline.
Don't try this challenge. It's also one of the tricky ones.
But on that note, we actually do have challenges. We call them Crack Me challenges, and they're actually available on our website. So if you're interested in reverse engineering, and it's really gamified, so capture the flag types of contests, then we have those up, which you can hone your computer analysis skills.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Môžeme prepnúť do slovenčiny. Vypnite si titulky.
Tak ste to s nami zvládli. Dnes sme zistili, že veda nie je len o laboratóriách, ale často je to o tom vedieť sa pýtať správne otázky,
pochybovať správny čas.
Áno, dokázať používať kritické myslenie a rozoznávať jednotlivé veci od manipulácií, od hoaxov, fakty od pravdy a fakty a pravdu od ostatných. Čiže
veda nie je na to, aby vám hovorila, čo je pravda, vy ju musíte len tak bez pochyb počúvať. Veda je nástroj, ktorý nám pomáha mýliť sa o svete okolo nás tak málo, ako sa len dá. Takže treba sa ju naučiť používať, aby sme tomuto svetu rozumeli čo najlepšie.
Presne tak. A na samotný záver by sme si chceli pozvať na stage ešte raz všetkých našich dnešných speakerov. Nech si spoločne s vami spravíme fotku, aby sme toto mohli ukazovať našim maminám. Takže privítajte veľkým potleskom všetkých ľudí, ktorí vám dnes spravili prezentáciu. Welcome. Yeah. Takto? A ja by som si rád dal aj selfie, if we can also selfie with the people. So if you can go here. A pokiaľ môžete zdvihnúť ruky, nech vás je vidieť. Perfect, we have it. One big applause.
Thank you so much, ďakujeme krásne.
Veľký potlesk aj vám za to, že ste prišli. Perfektne.
A samozrejme veľký potlesk teda okrem vám, ktorí ste prišli aj nadácii ESET a spoločnosti ESET, vďaka ktorým tu sme a ktorí týchto skvelých ľudí dotiahli na toto miesto a dotiahli vás sem, takže sme všetci pekne pokope. Takže zatlieskajme teda aj nadácii ESET a ESETu. A kým sa s vami úplne rozlúčime, pripomenieme, že je tu ešte veľa atrakcií, ktoré môžete pokojne tak do cca do jednej skúšať. Dole ten labyrint, kde stále blúdia ešte ostatní moderátori. Hore máte stánky, kde si môžete pozrieť niečo o bezpečnosti, o tom, ako búrať hoaxy, ako ich loviť. Tu máte potom taký digitalizovaný vesmír, kde si môžete skúšať, ako by sa vesmír menil, keby ste menili jeho parametre. Kopa zaujímavých vecí, všetko vyskúšajte a nechám na teba úplne posledné slovo.
Áno, ešte je tu labyrint, kde je tá perfektná termálna kamera, čo ste mohli vidieť. Takže poskúšajte, potestujte, zhruba do 13. to tu bude vám všetkým k dispozícii. A ešte raz jedno obrovské vďaka, že ste prišli a s potleskom sa s vami lúčime. Ďakujeme, čaute.